I am calling this meeting back to order at 10 p.m. This moves us, well, we're still in public forum. We haven't moved on yet. Is there anyone else who would like to speak during this time? Seeing none, we will move directly into Section 5, approval of the consent agenda. This is just our minutes from March 12th. Are there any objections to approving the consent agenda as such? Seeing none, we move directly into consideration of new business, 6.1.
Active request to approve SB-67-177 SGA Student Services Fees Act of 2026.
And I'll let our treasurer take the lead there as author.
Sorry, y'all, just give me a few seconds to set this up for y'all. Okay. Perfect. So this presentation just kind of gives the context and background of the Student Services Fee Act of 2025. So we'll just begin with the fiscal year 2025 approved budget. So total amount for the Educational Opportunity Fund was $291,000, 430. And if y'all don't know what an Educational Opportunity Fund, it's mainly just for student financial assistance. So some examples would be scholarships, need-based grants, student salaries, things like that. With student operations, those are services directly impacting students. So your departments, things that you hear around, like the RSC, Campus Rec, SGA, Student Health, the Sunflowers, etc. This is a budget development timeline. So we start in December where we call for funding requests. And then towards mid-January to early February, we do training for entities that may not have been through this process at all. It's completely optional. Entities that have been through the process can also come and ask questions. At the same time, me and Gabe were both there to help facilitate that, as well as the budget office. And then in early February, the requests are due and distributed. In early March, that's when we do have those committee hearings and deliberations. So that was a 1 week where Finance Commission was holed into this room, didn't see the sunlight or anything like that, just to deliberate for 20 hours. And then in March and April, which is now, that's where we are, we do the SGA Senate adoption. It's a 3-week process, like Dr. Fonseca had asked previously, or sorry, not had said previously, with this week being the first week. In April, the president will approve or change it, and to be clear, this is not the SGA president. This is Dr. Rick Muma, the university president, and then in mid-May to mid-June, we'll submit this to Cape Board and have their approval. So this kind of goes over through the different student support services fee. Like Gabe had said earlier, we are split into 3 different fees: the health and wellness fee, which pays for the YMCA membership, the SGA student support services fee, which is what we're currently looking at today, and then the intercollegiate athletics, which is the athletics fee. And then you can see the different amounts that a student would pay based on every tier. These tiers are based off of the number of enrolled credit hours, and tier rates decrease from tier 1 based off of a 1/3 and then a 2/3 basis. And then the summer rate is the half of the fall or spring rate. This is kind of the history behind all these changes. As you can see, there's some numbers going from -2.9% all the way up to 2%. These just kind of fluctuate year to year. The -2.9% was probably the lowest, and then the highest is probably 2.9. This is a revenue estimate. So in fiscal year 2025, we adopted a budget of $10,966,561. But then the revenue estimate is the $10,037,376, which is where you hear about the $900,000 shortfall. A 1% increase would put us at $10,138,841. A 2% fee increase would put us at $10,238,124, and a 3% fee increase would put us at $10,338,497. Some of the other considerations that Finance Commission had to make, was the governor's recommended budget, so a 2.5 increase for all benefits eligible state employees. Universities will likely have flexibility in this, and it's not kind of stuck. Legislative adoption is pending, but the final decision when we hear back from the governor is late April to early May. The student organization stimulus fund is statute required at $67,500 currently, and then the health insurance increase is a 5.2% increase for all state employees required by state law. Final thoughts, in AR-67-018 invoked Chapter 5 Budget Authority, which brings all line items forward. The Finance Commission also has to recommend a balanced budget, meaning that the resources allocated has to equal the budgeted expenditures. Programs presented this year will be locked into the same student rate until they are approved for when they present again. So that would mean that all year 8 entities would have to wait 2 years before they would be able to come back and present again. But year B would be able to come back the next year because that's according to the normal cycle. Year A, groups can request to present early, either due to an increase or changes to their programs. Proposals from the Finance Commission. So these are kind of the proposals that the Finance Commission had for the Educational Opportunity Fund. As you can see, some line items are at 0 or were just decreased. We can talk about if y'all have any questions specifically about a specific line item, please feel free to ask me and I can provide the reasonings behind those. But does anybody need a little extra time just to look this over? We'll go to the student services fee. So I actually split this into 2 just so that the numbers are readable. So as you can see, some of them have no variance, or some of them were funded also at a $0 line. So if y'all have any questions, y'all can let me know about those too. But does anybody need a little extra time to look at this?
Can I have a question?
Senator Barnes, go ahead.
Can we get a clarification on the number for student engagement and belonging for fiscal year 25?
Yes. So there was a typo. There should not be a. Actually, let me get back to you on that. Let me look at my spreadsheet real quick, and then I can get back to you on that. Any other questions so far?
Senator Stinnett.
Not directly over why y'all funded something, but I'm not making any motions yet. But are we still able to take from the Child Development Center even though we're on that decrease plan?
Yes. Any other questions?
Any other questions? And just to clarify, you have more presentation
Yes.
after okay, so this is a in-between presentation question. Do you have any questions about items as stated so far? Okay, seeing none. Go ahead.
This is the second part of the student services fee. So again, you can see that some things were approved at $0. Again, any questions so far on these?
Any
Okay.
questions?
Okay, perfect. Action requested by the Senate. So what is Finance Commission asking all y'all to do? Approve the budget allocations as recommended by the Finance Commission. Approve the flat rate of student fees for fiscal year 2026. So if y'all didn't watch the live stream, the student fees for this year stayed flat at 0%. This was largely because Finance Commission felt like we were doing such almost severe cuts to departments that it didn't feel fair to the students to be paying more for less of the student or shocker experience. And so that's why Finance Commission decided to keep it at a 0% flat rate, and then authorize the signatures for funding agreements. After y'all authorize that, the student body president will sign, and then the university president, and then this will be presented to the Kansas Board of Regents in Topeka. Questions?
Chairperson Bobbitt.
I have a question for the treasurer. Could you outline the process of what it would look like to suspend the 3-year cycle of $50,000 reduction should we wish to take more money from child development?
If I'm understanding your question right, what would the impact to the CDC be if we, no, can you re-ask your question?
So if we decide to take or decrease the Child Development Center by more than $50,000 this year, what would the process be for removing the stipulation that they be cut again next year at $50,000?
Yes, so the current $50,000 decrease is due to a stipulation put in by the Student Fees Commission last year. And so there was an agreement between the CDC and the Student Fees Commission that the CDC essentially was not serving enough students for the commission's liking, just because at that time they were only serving 18 students, children, versus the hundreds of children that they serve that were not students on campus. And so last year, Student Fees Commission decided that they would enter agreements slowly to decrease the Child Development Center so that the Child Development Center could be independent on their own. And so that stipulation is there. With the stipulation, the Child Development Center, in an effort to be self-sustaining, also increased their own prices on their own tier system based off of income. And so with that stipulation, you would have to, one, either remove the stipulation, or two, decrease it for all 3 years. Or not all three, because now we're on a 2-year cycle, but you get what I mean.
Chairperson Bobbitt.
I guess my question was asking, how would we remove that stipulation?
You would have to motion.
That would be more of a question towards Advisor Fonseca and myself.
Great question, Senator. So what I shared in Finance Commission when this question came up was you cannot erase the fact that that one Senate has required a 3-year reduction to this entity. And so if you decide, for example, if a motion is made to take an additional $50,000 off, the bill still stands that requires an additional $50,000 next fiscal year. The only way to prevent that from continuing is to amend this bill to add another act to suspend or not even suspend, but to end the 3-year reduction of the Child Development Center, so that if you take it now and decide, and that amendment passes, then next year, in 2027, we would not take the additional $50,000 at that point. But if you don't do that, in the next year, we would then take another $50,000 off of their budget, because we would have to enforce the bill that required us to do so. So it would be amending this overall bill to add that stipulation to cancel the 2027 reduction of the Child Development Center. Does that answer your question?
Additionally, I will say if you do make a reduction to the CDC without doing that additional act, then that next fiscal cycle, it would be a reduction based on that reduction. So it would be built into the system already. So whatever item is left upon for the CDC, this approved by this session, it would be a $50,000 cut on top of that reduction too for the next fiscal cycle, if that makes sense to you all. Okay, any other questions for Treasurer Wong? This is your golden opportunity. Chairperson Bobbitt.
Could you just briefly go through the line items that were reduced to zero and provide a little bit of explanation for our commissioners who may need a refresher, since they definitely watched it?
Yes, so with the Student Affairs Assessment and Retention, Finance Commission felt like their budget presentation didn't justify the $38,832. Realistically, the things that they were listing, the Finance Commission felt that admissions could take over pretty easily, just because of the things that they said they were programming for. For example, like they talked about the parent lounge for incoming freshmen, but realistically, admissions could probably absorb some of those responsibilities. And then for the Tilford Commission, Finance Commission felt like their presentation also didn't justify that budget. In all honesty, the commission was left more confused and with more questions than answers when they came in, and when Finance Commission asked them to provide more clarification and feedback, that was never presented to us, and so we really went in without knowing really what the $10,454 were being allocated or utilized for, and so we felt that students shouldn't be paying for a budget in which a department isn't coming readily prepared to answer these kinds of questions of what the funds are being used for. With Shocker Strengths, that was a new line item that was brought into the student fee cycle this year. Previously, it was funded through Student Affairs, and with the $900,000 shortfall, we just couldn't consider any new line items. And so that was realistically why it was also funded at zero. And then with the Educational Opportunity Fund, with the Cultural Ambassador Program, we heard feedback from a student as to how much of an impact this program realistically makes. And in that, they stated that it felt minimal, to be honest, and that it was not impactful, and that they really didn't have like a cohesive program or guidance to make the change that they were claiming to be making. And then for the WSU Student of the Year Scholarship Competition, that is housed under the Student Engagement and Belonging Office, and they felt that the $2,430 that office could somehow find to fund, and so we just cut that as well. If I'm missing any, please let me know.
I did have a question before you get to other senators. For 3 disability support services, I'm noting the variance at $0. So I guess my question for this, I'm seeing multiple of these organizations that are based on the variance of what was requested versus what was approved. Is this just a typo there, or is it basing off the variance of the fiscal year 25 approval amount?
Yes, so the variance is based off of the fiscal year 25 and how much was actually recommended. So if you're trying to do the math, ignore the requested section because that's not the math that was put into the variance. Realistically, we decided to just present the variance between fiscal year 25 and the recommended for this one, just so that you could compare between fiscal year 25 and fiscal year 26.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Senator Beatty?
I believe you missed explaining the sunflower reserves.
Yes, that is correct. Yes, with the Sunflower Reserve account, Finance Commission felt that we shouldn't be paying for reserves of entities, and so that was also just cut. However, with the actual sunflower budget line item, we kept the fiscal year 25 budget.
Any other questions? This would also be a great opportunity. Okay, Senator Pizzini.
I had a question about the student engagement and belonging. So the variance of $118,245, just to clarify, is that amount, according to the discussion earlier, is that amount for the unfulfilled positions, or is that like something else? Just to clarify, because we were all kind of like a little confused about that.
Yeah, of course. So the difference between the variance is, again, what was the difference between fiscal year 25 and what was approved by the Finance Commission. And with the Student Engagement and Belonging Office, the Finance Commission felt that an 8% reduction would be best, because 5% of that reduction would be to current unfulfilled staff, which includes 4 unfilled positions, and also a 3% cut to programs. Now, realistically, that is what the Student Engagement and Belonging Office presents to, and this is for any line item, if I'm going to be honest, but they come in and they present what that 5%, 8%, 10% cut would do, and what they think they would do, but realistically, when they get the budget, they may not do that kind of cut, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to pick on student engagement and belonging right now just because that's what we're on. Student engagement and belonging can say that they are cutting 5% to staff, but they could also just choose to take that 5% and cut programs instead of the staff. And that holds true for every single one of these line items. For example, Campus Rec says that they could be cutting student jobs first with that 2, 5, 8% reduction, or they could be cutting full-time staff. What they presented was the student jobs, but in the end what they presented first was the staff and then the student jobs, but they could flip it. And so really it's the difficult decision of Finance Commission is to be able to take what the information was presented, but also realistically think that may not be what they do.
Vice President Vaughn,
I move to extend the meeting to 11 p.m.
do we have seconds? Seeing multiple seconds. We'll move directly into the voting period on that item.
Speaker Owens,
Yes,
can I clarify something real quick while everybody's voting?
of course.
Okay, so with that, the student engagement and belonging, just ignore that 6 at the very end. I think I accidentally just was typing too fast and typed that little 6 at the end, so ignored that. It should be that number.
With 21 in favor, 0 against, and 1 abstention, the motion passes.
We'll go to, well, I have a question first, and then we'll get to Senator Barnes, if that's all right. Just clarifying the previous question as well. You stated that SEB obviously gave the proposal for the 5%, 8%, and 10% cut. From watching the video, pretending like I wasn't on the Finance Commission team, from just watching the video, I noticed that they stated that they would only eliminate one full-time coordinator position with the 8% cut, but you studied 4 positions. So with that 8% cut, is it that one position or all 4 that will be eliminated?
It would be all 4. I believe with the coordinator position, they were talking about the SGA coordinator, which SEB also houses.
Senator Barnes.
Am I allowed to clarify the amount for fiscal year 25 for student engagement and belonging?
I already clarified that. Earlier, I just stated that it should be just this number. You get rid of the 6 at the end.
Yep. I'd like to clarify what my math was when I calculated it, because I believe that number's incorrect.
Treasurer Wong, I have 1.4 million. It would be 1478063.
That's what I got.
And then take off that extra 6 at the end too, so 063. Just to,
Give me one.
no
moment.
worries, no worries at all. I was just anticipating your change there. Any other, okay, Senator Keller.
Okay, yes, sorry. It is the 063.
I had a question related to the, in SEB, they mentioned that their reserves are currently over what is allowed to begin with. If they're being reduced, what all exactly happens to their reserves? Do they keep it? Is it moved back into the budget as a whole? As in the, it lists as having just over 160,000, which is over their 10% allowed, and I was just curious what happens with that, if anything.
So I can't exactly. I'm trying to understand your question, and please let me know if I'm not answering it. But all student fee entities are required to keep 10%, but they can keep more than that 10%.
Could I also add to that, if
Yes.
permissible? So if a student fees entity has above that 10% reserve, it's allowed to be swept, but it does not mean it has to be or is going to be swept, if that makes sense. So that 10% is kind of the, that limit there of you can't sweep that 10%, but you can sweep above that 10% if that allocation is above that. Did that answer your
I
question?
was under the impression that they couldn't have more than 10%. I misread that.
And just to add to that too, departments ultimately get the budget, correct? But we, as this SGA body, we can't decide what the department does with their funds. We can only decide the budget and with the information that they present to us. And so I would just caution against people saying, well, I think that this department should do this with their money, because we can't legislate that. Departments have free will to do what they will. This is like the appropriations process where student groups can come to us and present their budget, but ultimately we can't tell student groups what to do with their money. And that's just the same as the departments. We can have all the information that the department tells us, but ultimately we can't decide how a department will utilize their funds. And so if a department comes to us and doesn't say anything about one of their accounts, we don't take that information into consideration because that information was not there in the first place.
Can I add a clarifying to the sub? I'm looking at their 8% reduction plan that states that they would, with about an 8% reduction, which was approved by the Finance Commission, it looks like they said they would eliminate only one full-time coordinator position, including salaries and benefits, and then look at ending the alternative breaks program and a reduction of $30,000 from programming budgets. But to your point as well, are you stating the 4 position because they stopped their search for those additional applicants to those empty positions?
So I understand what you're saying. Sorry, I was just trying to gather my thoughts. So when they stopped that search, it was preemptive and it was preventative and not as a reaction to what their budget was going to be. It was something that they stopped because they didn't know if they were able to fill those positions. But yes, those 4 positions would ultimately help student engagement and belonging staff currently. I believe in their presentation they mentioned that staff currently are working over 60 hours a week on multiple weeks at a time, and that they really needed those 4 positions to be filled just so that those staff can continue to contribute to the Shocker experience without overburdening them or even burning them out. But sorry, I think I missed the second part of your question. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, at what you said earlier too, not to make assumptions for the entity of what they could or won't do for that budget. But from their reduction proposal, they specified that they'd only eliminate that 1 full-time position and not the 4. So I guess my question there is, I know you're not Seb, but you are closest to it that can speak at this time. But for those 4 salaried positions, that equates well above the reduction amount that they had proposed. And if they're ending the searches for those individuals, that would bring them to a large amount, I guess, above the reduction there. Now I'm talking in circles, so I'll get to my point here, is I was under the assumption that it was that only that 1 position that they were going to have to eliminate and not be able to fill. Are you stating that they will eliminate all 4 positions under the current?
Yes, so they will eliminate all 4 positions under the current $1,359,818. And then just to remind y'all again, departments decide ultimately how they're going to manage those cuts. And so it doesn't really matter at this point what they propose in the presentation, other than that's how Finance Commission got to this point. But ultimately, like, I don't know, let's just say the Radigan Student Center said that they wouldn't cut student jobs, but they could just cut it retroactively, depending on how the budget turns out tonight. It just really is up to the departments, and we can't legislate what they do. We can only make decisions based off of the information that they give us.
Chairperson Bobbitt?
I'm gonna kind of follow up along the same lines as the speaker's question. Correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding was that the 4 positions were being paused as a reaction to the fiscal 25 shortage, whereas I thought it was one one position reduction was to address fiscal 26 shortage versus all four no longer going to be filled.
To my understanding, all four are not going to be filled at this time with the current budget. I mean, realistically, if you want to think about that, it makes sense because for fiscal year, the current allocation that Finance Commission is giving to student engagement and belonging is less than the fiscal year 25, which would ultimately cut those positions if they were looking to request more to be able to help fill those positions.
Could I have you put the budget reduction proposal proposed by SEB up there just so we can make sure that you all have the exact information, because I don't want it to be any miscommunication or like confusion there. But while they're doing that as well, does anyone else have any other questions? Senator Pizzini?
Hi, I was just wondering if you could go over again why the money that we approved to, which was originally, I suppose it was like 600,000, which turns out it wasn't what we had in there, but why it wasn't used, even a portion of it, to offset some of this. Thank you.
Yeah, and I can totally answer that. So with how severe we were cutting these departments, we also realized that SGA needs to take a cut. SGA can't say, hey, let's cut these departments but not cut ourselves. One, that's not equitable or sustainable for the overall budget. And two, ultimately, the special projects funds are there to be utilized in cases like these. We did not want to move towards the reserves because that would cause a funding shortfall for the next Senate or the next administration to ultimately have to also decide on. In addition, with fiscal year 25, that 500,000 will roll over into fiscal year 26. And so even if we took the 500,000 from fiscal year 26 line item, fiscal year 25, whatever is left will be moved to fiscal year 26. So if fiscal year 25 special projects fund, it stays stagnant at the 500,000-ish mark, then that would go to fiscal year 26, which right now is at 1.5 million, but it would be up to that 2 million because it rolls over.
Sorry, we were just chatting it up. No, it was serious business. Chairperson Bobbitt.
Okay, so once again, clarify for my own understanding, what I thought was the reasoning behind that was that if we funded it from this year, since we're dealing with multiple fiscal years in the future, it only pushes the issue. It doesn't actually solve it because we wouldn't be able to provide the funding for 27. So by making a reduction to next year's allocation, we're reducing the amount versus backfilling it.
If I could say something too, just to clarify, the commission itself may have varying opinions on why they did this, that, the other thing, but ultimately the final say and the only person who can speak on the commission is Treasurer Wong. If you have any thoughts or feelings about why you personally made that decision or things like that, you can speak to that, and please speak to that on the debating period on that item. But ultimately, as it sits, Treasurer Wong's is kind of the final say when it comes to those kinds of things. But if I could re-clarify too, could we get that reduction plan for SEB up there, just so we really make sure we have that information 100%? If you could scroll to the 8%. Okay, no worries.
So if you look at the highlighted portion, it's what a 5%, 8%, or 10% budget reduction to your fiscal year 26 budget would look like. But because they were reduced from their fiscal year 25, that would be the 4 positions.
If I could say something. My assumption of that is, that's an assumption on what the department may or may not do now, as those positions aren't necessarily filled. They may eliminate all those positions, they may not continue to serve all those positions, but that's a hypothetical. I'm just saying, for this specifically, this information was given to Finance Commission. This is exactly what they operated on for that proposal. But Treasurer Wong brings up a fantastic point that might have been considered later on, and also might be considerations that you make as you continue in this process.
I also want to extra re-clarify with this, sorry, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but with this 5% budget reduction, it would eliminate a full-time coordinator position. And then with the 8%, it's this plus this. So it'd be 2 full-time coordinator positions with the breaks program and $30,000. So it's not to say that A from the 5% budget reduction is being considered within the 8. It's A and A, B, C. Does that make sense? So it's not just the one that you're seeing with the 8%, it's 2, at least.
I disagree with that sentiment. My assumption was that the $66,000 that would eliminate the one coordinator position would be the first step of the 8% reduction. Then on top of that, the alternative break, then the $30,000, because ultimately, if we eliminate the 2 positions, it'd be well above that $105,000 reduction. So that was my interpretation of that personally. I just want to make sure that clarity is there because I'm a little confused. I wish we could get Gabe to say something, but Chairperson Grajeda.
Do I have to phrase it as a question?
I'll allow you not to for this.
Okay. I think you're right, because otherwise they wouldn't have stated ending the alternative breaks program in the 8 and 10.
So I guess we'll operate under this, whatever assumption you all have, with the advisement of our lovely treasurer. But Chairperson Adriana Owens?
I'm confused. I'm just wondering, under this consideration, I'm just ask a question. You can tell me if I'm just totally off the mark. Does this also include the 4 currently unfulfilled positions? Like, what I'm understanding or thinking I understand is that because of the projected shortfall of fiscal year 25, they did not fill 4 positions, and now considering the fact that they have another decrease, they're also not going to fill them, and then they're going to cut a full-time position and stuff on top of it? Or am I totally misunderstanding?
No, you are correct.
Senator Hatt.
Yeah, I was just reviewing some of the information that we got, and there's like a discrepancy in the student engagement and belonging line for fiscal year 25 on the bill that we're reviewing here, and then the binder information that was released to all of us. On the binder information, I believe it says, yes, student engagement and belonging received $1,321,983 for fiscal year 25. Whereas this one says it received $1,478,000, and then the typo there at the end for the last ending. So I was just a little confused where the $120-some thousand discrepancy is.
Yes, so with the student fees binder, we later found out that some of the numbers in the student fees binder was incorrect. So when Finance Commission went and considered all their allocations and things like that, we based it off of the magic Excel spreadsheet that Lindsay puts together, because it actually calculates head counts, TAP program, people, things like that. And so base it off of the bill and the Excel sheet, because I checked the bill 10 times. Obviously, I didn't check enough times if I had that small little typo in there, but that reflects. The bill and the Excel sheet reflect each other, which is the most accurate information that we have, and not the student fees binder.
Advisor Fonseca, did you have something?
Yeah, to clarify, the sheet you have in the teams was printed in February prior to some of this correct information being prepared. So I probably should have pulled it out before putting it in there, so I apologize for that confusion. The number that is in the bill, with the exception of that one error there, across all the FY25s are the correct numbers. In addition to, the spreadsheet in the budget does not take into account the salary dollars that were dispersed last year, because those are considered a separate line item when it's voted on. So the number that is produced encompasses all of the dollars that were allocated into a certain entity, and that is across any of these areas in there as well. So as much as you possibly can, I would ignore the Excel sheet that is in the teams, specifically in the binder, because it is not correct numbers highlighted based off of what's actually now in front of you there.
Which is also why I recommend you looking at for what does this line item do? How many members do they serve? What's their salary amount? Those kinds of things. And also to that point, that's year A items in that binder, not year B items, because year B items are also called to present much later. So when you're looking at those kinds of things, take them with a grain of salt, ask clarifying questions to those as well. Are there any other questions? We are operating on more of a strict timeline here as the building closing, so we're getting more information on if we can operate past 10. We can? Beautiful, we can, never mind. No worries there. But I want you to ask your final questions before we get into the debating period on this item, where you will start pulling those items or not pull those items, whichever you prefer. Any questions? Not a one questions, you're all ready to go. You all have all of your items ready? Okay, I'm seeing nods, so okay. Then I'll move us directly into the debating period on this item. Chairperson Adriana Owens.
I don't have an amendment ready, it's more of a discussion piece. But in my personal opinion, I think, given the information we were given in the presentation, that we should find at least $5,000 for the Tilford Commission. And I think we should get it from the Child Developmental Center. I think we should also add the Act 2 to amend that bill to take $50,000 from two. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that we have two $50,000 years to go, so that's $100,000 to. No, just one, so $50,000. I think we can take $5,000 from that if we amend it, and then we can allocate those additional funds somewhere else, perhaps to student engagement and belonging, perhaps to esports, if someone can come up with a better argument than I've been thinking in my own head about it. But other than that, I think at least the Tilford Commission deserves $5,000, if not the full $10,000.
Senator Hatt.
I am going to go ahead and just make a motion on this. I do like Chairperson Owens' suggestion on this. However, given the information that we were presented as senators watching Finance Commission, I'm a believer in second chances. I believe the presenter made a strong presentation now that she has been given time to prepare for this unique situation this year. And as a new representative of their organization, the shortfall beyond the cuts made by the Finance Commission was shored up largely by the Special Projects Fund. As I now believe it was a mistake to fund this organization at zero, I would advocate that they receive $9K. That is in line with the cuts of other similar orgs from the Special Projects Fund.
Do you have a motion in addendum to that?
Yeah, a motion move $9K from the Special Projects Fund to the Tilford Commission, just because that is much more uniform with other cuts that were made.
And so to clarify to you all, the Special Projects and Capital Fund is a Special Projects and Capital Fund for this upcoming session, not our Special Projects and Capital Fund. It's not the $600,000 that we approved, which was, as Senator Pizzini said, not necessarily that amount. I know you watched that live stream. at the $500,000 amount that it actually was due to the enrollment shortfall. If you have questions about that, please ask. But that money is earmarked for the next session, and it was confirmed by the judicial branch that that is possible and is within our bylaws and guidelines to do so. Any questions about the Special Projects and Capital Fund line item before we move on to getting a second? Okay, do I have a second for this motion? Seeing multiple seconds, we'll go Senator Murphy. You can second that one. Okay, then it moves us directly into debate on this item. Senator Hatch, would you like to speak?
Yeah, sure. So this is a little bit hypocritical because I am going to advocate that we do not start viewing the Special Projects Fund as a cash cow. Like, it looks very appealing to just start cutting from that line item and backfilling all the other pieces. But as somebody has already pointed out, that line item has already been cut by 25%, and it does really good things on campus. Like, we're already down to $500,000 from this year because we've spent $1 million on it on necessary things, in my opinion. So the only reason I'm advocating for this specific line item is because this is very much in line with how other cuts were made and at numbers that, again, are in line with other cuts.
Just a reminder to the body, so if we'll get into more debate on this item, but if this passes, then that just means we can consider it for next week to be voted on and to be put into the bill as law, I say with air quotes to those who aren't watching. So I just want to clarify that this isn't the final vote. It's just the final vote to consider it. Chairperson Adriana Owens.
I have a question for you regarding that. So if we vote yes to consider this for next time, can we also vote yes to consider similar thing but different funding source?
You'd have to pull that line item and have to be a separate motion.
Okay, cool.
So if you would like to consider that, you absolutely can, but that's something that you'd have to pull separately. Is there anyone who against this motion that would like to speak? Senator Island?
As much as I agree with kind of the foundation of the Tilford Commission, I do believe that they have a large amount of external funding sources that they can pull from. Like the presenter spoke to us today about, she's very candid and open about still being able to operate at pretty much the same level should they be funded at a $0 amount. Additionally, when you look at the reviewed resubmission, you can see that they received over $30,000 in additional revenue outside of the $10,000 that came in from student fees. And through their expenses, they were able to operate well under their means. And so in terms of the sentiments that Senator Hatch said, and like not pulling from the Special Projects Fund, since it's already lost over 25%, I think that it would be dangerous to take such funds from future Senates, especially because the Tilford Commission has more than enough means to continue to operate at its current capacity.
Anyone who is in favor of this motion that would like to speak? In favor. Senator Pizzini.
I am. I will speak in favor. To Senator Island's point, first, I would like to say that the money that the Tilford Commission, according to their presentation, was awarded is like almost like fundraising or gifts. And it's not guaranteed. And I think everyone knows that fundraisers for any reason, maybe you'll get a gift this year, but next year it might not come. So it's nothing that's guaranteed. And if that's the case in this current environment, it's very possible that a lot of people will not be giving. So to not fund because they have money is, I don't see the kind of the rationale behind that. Just because they have the ability and they have the community connections over many years, because this organization, again, has been in the community for many years, so they have established relationships, and they can leverage those. They shouldn't be penalized for doing so. But again, I do believe that they should have some funding. Whether it comes from the special projects or somewhere else is, I suppose, to be determined.
Before we continue, I have a clarifying question for Treasurer Wong. I know that a couple individuals were talking about conference travel and those kinds of things within this entity's budget line items. And can you clarify whether or not that conference could be considered viable for the individual funding process?
Yes, so individuals, regardless of like where, I guess what department they're under or like where they come from, can apply to individual funding so long as it's not like a student organization. And so again, just kind of referring back to current policy, when multiple members of student activities campus, sorry, no, that's not it. SAC, I'm just going to say SAC, came and presented to Finance Commission about individual funding. They were fully allowed to do so under the current policies because they were all from a department or what is considered a department and not what is considered as a recognized student organization. Now, if the Tilford Commission was a recognized student organization, they wouldn't be able to go through individual funding, but instead they would be able to go through organizational funding. But it can't be both. So with the Tilford Commission as it stands right now, and as with current policies as it is right now, they would be able to go through individual funding only. Does that make sense or clarify?
Yeah. And I hope that clarifies a little bit about that conversation earlier too. Vice President Fawn?
After clarifying with Advisor Fonseca, I move to extend the meeting to midnight.
Now listen, that does not mean we have to go to midnight, but it's not looking like it's done anytime soon, and I will commit to email your professors if you have assignments due tonight. I will do that.
Point of order. Do we have to finish this motion and then do that, or are we allowed to do this inside of a motion?
So we're in the debating period on this item, and I will consider it viable to do this, but fantastic question. Thank you for bringing it to attention. But back to what I was saying. If you have assignments due tonight and you need me to email your professor, I will consider doing it if you come up to me later, okay? So vote yes. I'm going to go to this motion first, and then I'll get to you. Is there a second? Oh my gosh, I second it. Moving into the voting period on this item.
Voting is open. Missing one.
Make sure it's on.
I don't think so. Still missing one. Can everyone just press? Everyone make sure it's on too. If there's no green light, it's not on. Okay, there we go. With 19 yes, 2 no's, and 1 abstention, the motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, back into debate. Chairperson Bobbitt.
Okay, I will be speaking neither in affirmation nor negation. I have a neutral opinion to offer. I would advise being careful about considering how much money the organization has. A large portion of that money is specifically tied to the Tilford Conference. So while we may look at it and be like, oh my gosh, they have lots of money, in reality, they are starting to build up the amount of money that they will hold in reserve to host this conference. I think the presenter said that they had received 2 transfers from different KBOR institutions of $6,000 apiece, as these institutions are buying in to the conference and sending their share preemptively. So once again, just neutral. at this time, I don't really have opinions about whether or not I support this motion, but I just do want to make sure that everybody is approaching it from a point of informed participation.
Anyone else? Senator Henley?
I just wanted to put out a thought. I'm weary from pulling from the Special Projects Fund for this. I do want the Tilford Commission to have money. I think that it's like worth putting money towards. But, and this is just my opinion, but I almost feel as though the Child Development Center didn't really get a decrease in budget because they were already expecting to get that 50,000 taken. So I would suggest we pull from them. And that's just my opinion on it. But if we all think that this is a better option, I'll go for it too, because either way, I think they should get some money.
So a couple things. First, if you don't like the fact that it might come from the Special Projects and Capital Fund, that's okay. Fail this motion. Because then you can make another motion taking it from elsewhere. Additionally, I also have a neutral opinion to offer as well. So looking at their budget requests, their one-page summary, it looks like a lot of their items are programming and then the conference travel that they were discussing. With the information also that some of that could be supplemented by the individual funding process because they can go through that process and get funding there. I am okay with a reduction in their $10,000 budget to $9,000 or even further beyond that. So I understand other senators' points there, but I'm also not opposed to the $9,000 figure either. I'm not opposed to the Special Projects and Capital Fund, but I'm also not in favor of it either. I'm really sitting in the middle of most of this conversation. That's beautiful, that's fine, that's okay. But I'd love to get more thoughts opposed, because we had quite a few in favor. So anyone else opposed to this motion that would like to speak? Anyone else who would like to speak in favor or middling? Okay, Senator Rodriguez, go ahead.
Motion to vote.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm gonna not consider that because I do think that we'll have no one else and then we'll be able to move without a formal, oh, do you have something to say?
Future reference, the correct motion is to motion for previous question.
Yes, I was going to clarify that as well. Thank you for doing my job. Okay, I'll give one more lap around the room and then we'll consider that. Anyone else who would like to speak? Okay, unfortunately, I will consider your motion here since there are members who would like to speak. I know, I heard you. I see people who are trying to speak, so now I'm going to consider our senator's motion. So that is a motion to move to previous question. Do I have a second? Seeing multiple seconds. That moves us directly into vote on this item. This is a vote on the
Voting
vote to
is now
end
open.
Talking. So this is not a vote on the pushing it itself. It's the vote on ending debate.
Still missing two. Well, you're not both of them. Okay, with 19 in favor, 2 against, and 1 abstention, the motion passes.
Okay, you don't need to clap for that. Now that moves us directly into the vote on these, like pulling these line
Point of order,
items.
madam. You said the vote was 19-1?
Yes.
Did we increase our number of senators?
Yes, by 1.
We did have a senator join us, so no worries. Senator Island?
I was gonna say point of clarification that the vote was to the motion, was that to motion to the previous question and not on pulling these?
That's exactly correct, thank you. Girl, huh? Oh, yes. So that's to move, not the broader yet. We haven't voted yet. Thank you for that clarification, Senator Island. Now we can actually vote on pulling these line items for them to be considered for another vote next week. Any questions? Beautiful.
Voting is now open.
Now we do need a 2/3 majority, so just keep that in mind.
With 11 in favor, 7 against, and 4 abstentions, the motion fails. With 11 in favor, 7 against, and 4 abstentions, the motion fails. Just for clarification, vote needs, oh my goodness, the votes we need are 15 for 2/3 majority.
There's some silly energy in here that I like, but also may not be productive to a broader conversation. So, okay, that brings us directly into the debate on this item itself. This is a time for you to pull more items or et cetera, et cetera. Anybody else? Senator Lewis.
I move to transfer $9,000 in funds from the Child Development Center to the Tilford Commission.
Do I have a second? Seeing a second by Senator Henley. Anytime. Okay, that moves us directly into the debate on that item. Would you like to speak during that time?
As people have already said, the Child Development Center was already expecting $50,000 or a $50,000 decrease. So this small addition to that should not affect them too much. And like Senator Adriana Owens said, we can potentially amend the next year's reduction to accommodate for this reduction.
So I will clarify one thing. As it sits, if we reduce the CDC by $9,000 without the Act 3 stipulating, that would be like $41,000, for example, that's reduced next year budget, then it'll be $50,000 on top of that reduction of $9,000 too. So I just want to clarify to the body for that information as well. Chairperson Adriana Owens.
I also want to clarify, I'm in favor of this. I also already have a motion to amend planned out to cancel the child development, the CDC's 3-year budget thingy. So don't worry about that. We'll make sure to do that. So this means that we have $50,000 to play with. I think this is more than an adequate use of the funds. So I think vote in favor.
So I would hesitate to say that we have $50,000 to play with because we don't. As it sits right now, that $50,000 is a statutory responsibility prevailed from the student fees last year that has to happen without that additional Act 3 or Act whatever that you'd add. So I would hesitate to use that verbiage because that's not necessarily the truth. But as it would sit, this would be a reduction of $59,000 from the CDC's budget line item. So I just want to make that clear to everybody. Any other, Chairperson Bobbitt?
Okay, I'm once again going to speak from a neutral position on this one. In the previous discussions, I have been a large advocate of taking additional money from the Child Development Center, but I just want to make sure everyone's clear that we enter into some very spooky territory by dipping into this money. By watching the video of the live stream, there were some serious concerns raised about the viability of the Child Development Center if we cut them beyond $50,000. So 2 possibilities that I need everyone to internalize and consider. The first one is that we essentially put them out of business with this. And the second option is if they are not viable, do we sweep all of the money and reallocate it?
Big thoughts here, team. I also want to say one thing before we get to Senator Island as well. I don't want to operate under the assumption that whatever potential amendment may or may not pass on Act 3, you have to get a 2/3, and there's no guarantee you will get it. So operate under the assumption when you are voting on this that you are removing $9,000 extra on top of that $50,000. That is what you're voting for, nothing else. You're not voting for an Act 3 or a potential Act 3 that doesn't exist, hasn't happened yet. You don't even know if the rest of the senators want. So please, when you're voting on this, operate under the assumption that this would be removing a $59,000. They would also have an extra $50,000 taken from that $59,000 next fiscal cycle as well, built into the process. So
I have a point of information if you'll entertain it.
please, Chairperson Bob, but please do.
I don't know who's the proper person to direct this to, but as a matter of procedure, when in the 3 meetings would it be appropriate to make that amendment to add an act, whatever?
This meeting. This meeting would be the meeting.
Can I, to be clear, tonight the only chance you have to do anything different to this bill, adding an act, adding 14 acts after this, there are no amendments next week and there are no amendments the following week. So do keep in mind, tonight is the only day you can touch this bill. And there's no let's call a meeting tomorrow. No, it is tonight is the first read of this bill. Anything you want has to be done tonight.
Senator Hatch.
Yeah, given the extremely difficult nature of getting a 2/3 majority, I just cannot support pulling from the Child Development Center until that amendment actually is voted on and goes through. If there's a way to table this amendment, I would be for that until we actually discuss ending the Act 3 if we're in favor of cutting from them more. I know I was very harsh to them in the video. But yeah, personally, I just won't support cutting them without removing the 50,000 stipulation for next year.
Anyone else who hasn't? We'll go Senator Island.
I think I also have a neutral kind of standpoint to offer on this position. I think in alignment with the sentiments from both Senators Bobbitt and Senator Hatch, I think that there's quite a dangerous territory when it comes to, this is not going to be accurate, but painting the Child Development Center as kind of the villain in this situation and continuing to pull money from them. I think from conversations with students who are really closely attached with the Child Development Center and the children that are coming in there, I think that I know in a preliminary conversations we had concerns about students not sending their children to the Child Development Center, and that was kind of the reason why we got ourselves into this situation in the first place. But I think the more that we take away from their financial capacity to take in children, and in turn, Treasurer Wong talked about earlier, having to increase the fees that they're charging for people that are sending their children there, that decreases the ability for students who are already paying for tuition full-time to be able to financially find it feasible to send their children to the center. And so I agree with Senator Hatch that I wouldn't be in favor necessarily of taking any sort of money from them unless the stipulation that an additional $5,000 next year would not be taken as well.
Anyone else who hasn't spoken that would like to share?
Point of information.
Senator Hatch?
Is tabling this an actual option that we have?
I will not consider it an option.
Additional point of information.
Please share.
Within the rules of this space and this specialty procedure, are we permitted to straw poll or is it out of bounds?
You would have to place us into committee of the whole to do so. Unfortunately, as it sits, this is a formal proceeding and process, and we don't have that right or responsibility outside of committee of the whole, unfortunately. I anticipated, yeah. So I would like to speak to this as well. As a person who watched the Finance Commission video, I I did feel concerned for the operation capacity of the Child Development Center in the past. In my years here in Senate, this has been an ongoing conversation with the CDC of they're not serving students in the instance that students aren't putting their children into the service. This year they had 6 students who utilized their services and had their children. It was 6. I just checked, unless someone else had something. But in previous years it was, and I believe Treasurer Wong said 18, and that was due to tuition charges being increased to maintain that operating budget. And from what I watched as well, it looked like they were altering their way of asking for money by kind of focusing it on their student positions that are staffing positions, and to ask for student fees allocations to fund those positions of students who are working at the CDC, as a way to say, here's how we are serving students. This might not be for students who have children here, but it is definitely a career opportunity for our students who are going into education or working with children, or even not working with children and need a job there too. And so I was interested to see that that change over the years, but I appreciate them coming and discussing. I wouldn't support a $9,000 reduction on top, simply because I worry about the feasibility of their program as it sits, and student positions are sacred to me. I think salaries and positions like that are truly one of the things that we're able to offer students in a place where there's not a lot of job opportunities for students available at universities. So I wouldn't be in favor of that. If we wanted to have a broader discussion later about, making that Act 3, I'd be comfortable with it. But as it sits, I will vote no on this motion, simply because I cannot look at a $9,000 decrease that would then next fiscal cycle be guaranteed a $50,000 slash on top of that, because I worry for the CDC, to be honest. And as much as there are varying opinions and thoughts about how they're serving students and those kinds of things, I think as it sits now, I would not be comfortable potentially endangering their program with that kind of slash, even a $9,000 decrease upon, because they're getting more than a 10% decrease built into the system already. Yeah, that's just my thoughts here, so I'll vote no on that, but I'd love to hear more thoughts too. Chairperson, let's go to Senator Murphy, and then we'll go to Chairperson Adriano.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and keep dogpiling on it. I'm also gonna be voting no. I feel like it's unnecessary. We're already decreasing their budget enough. An extra $9,000. It's gonna be doing a good amount of damage, and I just feel like it's unnecessary.
Chairperson Adriana Owens.
I just have a clarifying question. So correct me if I'm wrong, if we were to fail this specific amendment, would we be able to bring up like almost the exact same amendment hypothetically if the Act 4 had passed? Or are we not allowed to bring up an amendment that's almost entirely the same?
You can do the same amendment as long as it's up to my discretion. I will say you are allowed to do that simply because if an Act 3 passes, then it'd be presenting new information to the body. I would then allow another consideration of that vote. But if you decide to fail this motion and then the Act 3 doesn't pass, I would not consider that viable because you literally just did the same thing. I hope that answers your question there. Anyone else who'd like to speak on this line item? Senator Lewis?
Point of clarification, am I able to pull my own amendment?
Yes, you can. Yeah, I was just like, yeah. Yes, you can.
I'd like to kill my amendment.
Silly verbiage, I love that. Okay, with that consideration, then we move directly back into deliberations. I'll go Senator Stinnett.
Okay, before we make any other motions, I'm going to please ask for us to talk about places we could potentially pull this from that everyone, or at least a general body, would be somewhat okay with. I'm not asking a poll, I know we can't do that, but please give some other places to where you think people might be more okay with it, and please share your opinion on that.
Thank you, Senator Sinette. You bring up a fantastic point, too. The point of talking about it first is to get general consensus of the body to see if people would even be in favor of a potential motion. So I agree with that sentiment that maybe take a second for a motion unless you're doing something that you know will be approved by 2/3 of the body, to be honest. I said I'd go to Chairperson Adriana Owens and then I'll go to Senator.
Hey, so I'm going to propose a motion. Yeah, be mad about it. Okay, so I'm going to propose that we introduce an Act 4 that stipulates to take $50,000 from the Child Developmental Center and cancel the Child Developmental Center 3-year budget reduction authorized by SB-66-230 Student Fees Act of 2024.
You did your homework. Little light snap for that would be appropriate. Oh, cute, cute. Love it. Thank you. Really love the community we're building here.
I have a point of order on that.
Chairperson Bobbitt, please share.
Within Act 4, can you stipulate that we're taking 50,000, or do you just have to cancel it outright?
You can stipulate that. Whether or not you would recommend that or not, I'm not sure. You can say that it's $50,000, then we're locked in at the $50,000 allocation. You couldn't reduce it from then, if that gets approved. But let me clarify, if Chairperson Adriana Owens wants to remove the stipulation but still allow you to take money from this year's cycle, then you need to change the verbiage to reflect that motion. So if you're wanting it to be to cancel the Child Development Center's 3-year budget reduction authorized in HB, whatever, and to not keep the $50,000. But as it sits, you can put in there that it'd be $50,000. Am I correct in assuming that?
Correct, and I would probably, just to ensure that there's not assumptions in the future, the 3-year reduction required a $50,000 holdback, and so the bill SB 66230 did not say 10,000, did not say 20,000. It did clarify 50,000. So just for some clarification's sake, if you're going to cancel a budget reduction, I think your language should stipulate the money, the totality of the money you're trying to take, so that we know if when we apply this bill, when the bill goes into effect, if it passes, then we know we need to cancel the totality of the 50,000 in the 3-year reduction as well. So we talked about it before of just without it, I think just to make some clarification so that there's no question about it. If you're going to take the 50 grand because 230 required you to take it, I think you should specify the language in there as well.
You can also state that you would like to keep the reduction of $50,000 this year and also remove that $50,000 for next year fiscal cycle. That's another option for you to do so as well. Okay, so next fiscal cycle, the Child Development Center will see a $50,000 budget shortfall, whether anyone likes it or not, unless it is legislated to remove that 3-year reduction policy. Looking at the motion there, if you want to keep the $50,000 reduction this year, you can. But as it states now, that would be eliminating the reduction for this fiscal cycle. I'm trying to move now. I'm trying to look at Advisor Fonseca to make sure I'm right. That would remove the $50,000 stipulation this session as well, this fiscal cycle also. Okay, I'm wrong. Okay, that's cute. That's fine.
So 2026 already has a $50,000 reduction because of SB 66230. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chairperson Owens. You want to go ahead and take the 50,000 that would be in FY27 and then cancel so that we don't take another 50,000 in FY27. Because if that second language isn't there, we would be taking another $50,000 to enforce SB 230 or SB 66230. So to clarify, you're taking 50,000 from what would be the next reduction, because 26's reduction is automatic. You can't touch that. You'd be taking 27's reduction and then canceling 27's when 27 comes. So we're basically taking $50,000 from the future to take it back now and canceling for the future.
I do recommend you put fiscal year 27 just as a cute little precursor, but you don't have to, but just a thought. We haven't gotten a second.
Are you offering that as a
haven't gotten a second on your amendment yet, so not quite yet. Chairperson Bobbitt.
To my point of order, essentially, I just want to make sure the language is correct. So I think or what I would personally propose is Act 4, authorize the cancellation of the 2027 $50,000 reduction authorized under SB blah 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 Student Fees Act of 2024.
I have the same thought, but Chairperson Adriana Owens, share with the class. Are you wanting to take? I have a question that I know you know that I'm asking too. But when you say to take $50,000, that means you could not take any more money out of the Child Development Center with these line items, because it'd be taking in totality $50,000 from this line item. You could not take more money because you would just have put it in the act that you can't. So you might need to remove that section that puts to take $50,000 so that in future discussion you can take that extra, bless you, $9,000 or whatever money you may want to take from it. And to just keep in canceling the next fiscal cycle's $50,000 reduction. Just a thought. But could you give us your motion again, or any amendments to that, or any changes to that motion that you were thinking?
You gave me a lot of information. Can I clarify
Yes,
what you're
of course.
asking? When I originally did the amendment, it didn't have the $50,000 stipulation because I didn't, well, obviously I wanted to clarify the amount that would have been taken in SB-66-230. But I also understand, and I'm open to friendly amendments, I understand that if we end up only taking, hypothetically, the $9,000 amount, if we end up only taking the $9,000 amount for the Tilford Foundation, or if we take more and stipulate it elsewhere, I'm okay with that. Then what happens to the other leftover balance? I'm not totally sure. So I'm open to a friendly amendment to seek clarification.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I'm open to that as a friendly amendment.
You have not gotten a second, so you have not, it's not an amendment proposed to the body
It was
yet.
just a statement.
Okay, did you have, would you like to propose this amendment? Changes to your motion?
Then yeah.
Okay, beautiful. So you're proposing this verbiage here. Chairperson Bobbitt, can I do this first and then get to you?
I did have a question.
Oh, boy.
Sorry, I'll wait.
Chairperson Bobbitt, go ahead.
I would still argue that this new language does not accomplish what we're trying to do.
Senator Hatch, please share.
I also agree with Senator Bobbitt. I'm reading as this is another $50,000. The $50,000 reduction for this year is already in that budget, so we don't even have to talk about fiscal year 26. All we have to say is cancel the reduction to the CDC from fiscal year 27 is authorized within SB 260. I
Advisor
believe that
Fonseca?
that's it.
So this is gonna be complicated, so everyone just kind of bear with me for a second. We have already reduced, because SB 66230 already took out $50,000 for the upcoming fiscal year, which is FY 26. The request, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, the request is to take an additional $50,000, and this is the only way it works. It would have to take an additional $50,000 cut for FY 26 and cancel the cut in 27. This time next year in 27, we would be reducing the budget again by $50,000. So it is technically, if this motion passes, it is technically taking $100,000 from the CDC this year. The $50,000 that's required plus an additional $50,000 that would then end 27 budget. As the entity that would be applying language to the student fees bill in the future, this language does say we would take an additional 50, which is a totality of $100,000 cut this year, and cancel next year's reduction. So they would be left with, if this passes, they would be left with then $122,469. The only way you can take $50,000 from what would be FY27 is to take it and then reduce their budget to do that. It would be a cut of $100,000 to their budget. That is how you apply that language and how we would apply that process from there. You would be borrowing FY27's money, not even borrowing. You'd be preemptively taking it because they would already be there this time next year. So to correct if I'm incorrect, maybe to correct me if I'm wrong, you want to take not only the 50 we already have, because that money disappeared already. It has been allocated into other areas. You want to preemptively take next year's 50,000 and spend it now.
Can I answer your question with a question?
If the speaker allows that.
If the speaker allows. I'll allow it. Okay, so what I'm hearing right now is that since the fiscal year 26 that money is gone. But if the SB-66-230 enacts that money next year, 50,000 will be taken. So by the end of next year, a total of $100,000 will have been taken. So to end that bill, we're then taking what would have been taken next year, this year.
Correct. You'd be fast tracking the $50,000
Okay.
to spend it now.
Do you feel as if, and I'm sorry if this is impeding anything, do you feel as if fast tracking that money now will impede Child Developmental Center in a way that would not have done if it was taken next year?
That's a question for Treasurer Wong.
Okay, someone, please.
Could I point of
No, you may
information?
not. No, you may not. Let Treasurer Wong answer that. I'll get to you after.
So just to clarify, so I understand the question is, you're looking to fast track next year's $50,000 cut to the consideration of this fiscal 26. So you're taking fiscal year 27, 50,000 to fiscal year 26 for a total of 100,000. Correct. Okay. So Finance Commission actually asked this question to the CDC as well. And the CDC, they are prepared for a $50,000 cut, but they are not prepared for a $100,000 cut. They have a very specific plan in place currently that they work with student affairs and their finance people to be able to slowly raise the tier, what is it called? Their tier tuition for the children. And so fast tracking was an option that the Finance Commission considered and then completely scrapped when we heard that it was not feasible. They would not survive the $50,000 cut because all of their money that they receive right now is the student fee dollars and the tuition dollars. They do try to look at other ways of funding, but because of just how large their operation is and their programs and things like that, they don't qualify for a lot of additional funding from the federal standpoint, and two, they do I really want to emphasize that they do have that specific plan in place to only remove 50,000 in accordance to the act number, whatever.
And before I get back to Advisor Fonseca, my assumption about this motion was that it would cancel the $50,000 that would be taken this next fiscal cycle and not take an additional $50,000. It would just be the $50,000 built in that's taken already. So it would do the tier cycle for this fiscal year, eliminate that cycle, just saying we're not doing that for next fiscal cycle anyway. So just that only would be taken, the $50,000 that they already are aware of would be taken, or if people make additional motions and a little bit more. But that was my assumption, that was the goal of that motion, not taking $100,000 preemptively building upon to take that money for next fiscal cycle that would be built in the program. But I guess my question is, I don't know how the verbiage of that bill is. Does it require that, or do we have the power to just strike that and be like, we don't want to do that anymore? Sorry, previous senates.
That's a great question that I know I don't have it's not fair to say that I don't have an answer to. I probably need to think on that. So I don't have that answer right now. The additional thing I would say, and I'm not saying that none of you care about next year's student government, but as the only person who's going to be here guaranteed next year, it does, food for thought, it does then put next year's student government, who then didn't enjoy the same privilege you had this year of having an additional $50,000 in their budget to reallocate to other areas. Because this fees commission, whether you looked at it or not, was saved $50,000 of additional cuts they didn't have to make because what the guaranteed cut was already built into that. So I think that's the other point. I think if I were to, again, answer your other question, I don't know if the Senate has the ability to cancel the special projects fund either, because the bill, I'm trying to think of a long term of like, there's an example of a bill that requires funding for 3 years. And so I would assume that I don't know if you have retroactive authority to cancel something that is written into a bill that says you have 3 years to do it. That would probably be a question for the court to have to rule on, because I have no idea how to be able to answer that question, knowing that there's an example already on the floor, or not on the floor, but an example in our books that has similar language.
I'll go to Chairperson Bobbitt, then we'll go back to Chairperson Adriana Owens.
Okay. The reason I was wanting to ask a point of information is because, similar to the speaker, I think we are all flying at different altitudes, and we are talking about an issue, but from very different perspectives. Because my understanding was we were talking about a $59,000 reduction this year, and then canceling the 50 next year, not pulling a full 100 this year. And then I have a request for Gabe. Will you pull the bill that authorized this reduction, because my understanding of that is it said it was a $150,000 reduction over 3 years. Because if that is the language that was included, then we need to pull all 150,000. We don't have the option to just be all like, we're forgiving it. It becomes a timeline issue, but we're still complying with the bill's intent of pulling 150,000.
My urge here is for us to sit on this conversation and talk about other line items while we get clarifying information. But I will still go to Chairperson Adriana Owens, so if you want to consider your motion too, I will consider that. But just as an advice, to let it sit while he gets that bill ready.
I'm comfortable letting it sit. I just wanted to say, clarify the intent of the amendment. The original intent was that the $15,000 is kind of gone. We don't have anything to do with it. We would then take the $9,000 in addition, so it would be like 59 total this year, and then we would just cancel next year's so that they wouldn't have to deal with that budget shortfall, and then they could deal with the idea that they're like, okay, well, we don't have to have that cut on top of it. I would also say if it ends up being where it's a $50,000 additionally, totaling like $100,000, I'm not comfortable with that, and therefore I feel as if like that wouldn't be something I would want to continue looking in that avenue, but I'm comfortable sitting on it for now to get further information. Hopefully we can find a way to do this so that we can make sure that the Child Development Center can like stay afloat while also not having to deal. Anyway, all of this to say, the intent was not to take $100,000 from them this year.
Thank you for that clarification. I'm going to bring it to any discussion on any other line items so that we can get that conversation. Please sit your conversation on the CDC until Gabe has clarifying information on that. Any other line items that would like to be considered? I'll go to Senator Hatch.
If this is out of order, I apologize in advance. Again, I think that some senators had plans on where to get money from for the Tilford Center, and some of them had plans for the Child Development Center because, again, it does look appealing to advance that $100,000. I would still advocate that we pull from the special projects amount because at the end of the day, if they gave that presentation that they came and gave us today in Finance Commission, I wholeheartedly believe that in line with all of the other items that were cut that were similar in nature, they would have gotten 8,000 or 9,000. And I understand that that is a big hypothetical, but after reviewing the material from that day, I really feel like this is what would have happened had they been fully prepared for that, and it would have come from the Special Projects Fund because that is what happened with every other org. Thank you.
I'm going to go to Senator Stinnett, then Senator Enzi, and then Senator Barnes.
So I completely agree with Senator Hatcher's sentiment. I really would love some other discussion on this, though. Please tell us where you would like to pull things from if you don't agree with this, because if not, we are getting to really muddy water in case the CDC does not work out. And I would love to have some other options, because It is 11:34 p.m. I don't know what's going to happen if we're going to move to extend this anymore, but I would really love for us to start making some tried and true progress on this.
Beautiful sentiment. Senator Enzi?
So, looking over things, I personally think instead of pulling from the special projects and capital fund, we should be looking at pulling from SEB, because we were at a 9-something% shortfall. And of all the reductions we did, they're one of the lower numbers as far as percents go. So I personally think that we should pull from SEB to give to the Tillman Foundation. And I would like to also pull from them more to put money back into the special projects and capital fund, because I think we're pulling quite a lot out of there and very limiting next year's Senate on what they can do.
Okay. I said to Senator Barnes.
Can I get a clarification on what time we extended to originally?
We extended till midnight.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Senator Lewis, you had something?
So, you might remember, but back at the beginning of Senate, I asked Dr. Advisor Gabriel Fonseca if we could use multiple of these line items at once to put money into or take money out of. Would like to pull, or I want to, or get a vibe from you all, but I want to take like a little from Campus Rec, a little from the RSC, and then a little more from the Special Projects Fund. And the Special Projects Fund, if we take from that, it's as if we approved funding for 3 years each time.
I'm going to go to, has anyone who hasn't spoken that would like to share with the class, please share, and then we'll go to Chairperson Bobbitt. Chairperson Bobbitt, go ahead.
Okay, this is the point in the conversation that I'm going to put out that spooky vibe that I was talking about earlier. If we are considering reductions to child development, this has been a decade-long process. I think we have to have an honest conversation about whether we just pull the plug entirely, take all 281,000 and reallocate it. If they cannot survive a $100,000 reduction, then perhaps it's an entity we just let go.
Thank you for that contribution.
Speaker Owens, I have the answer for your
Advisor
earlier question.
Fonseca, please share.
So the bill does require 50,000 from 26 and 50,000 from 27. So it did require the reduction in there for that aspect, and it is right there. I don't know if you can, I know you can't see the highlighted part, but it does require future fiscal years to be reduced each year by 50 grand.
So we could amend that to change, we could institute an act to change that.
I don't know what that part means.
From the previous conversation of eliminating that $50,000 for fiscal year 27, that is verbiage we can create to do.
I think this bill requires a $150,000 reduction to a budget. I
does
think
it say that?
advancing, the bill, the line above it takes the $50,000 off too.
Oh, I see.
Wherever, sorry. Right here, that's already built in a $50,000 reduction. So then this is future forwarding for 26 and 27. So
Do you
I
mean
think
the 100?
for that would be a totality of 150. And I think it's important to also, just for reference for people, this is not their entire operating budget. This is a portion of their operating budget. A portion of their budget is funded by student fees. So this does require, this would read as it requires that you have to do it. Could you take an advance of it? I think that's language you're going to have to try and hope that the court would agree with you in that sentiment. And because it does, it could be perceived as similar language of how the Special Projects Fund was also established as well. Does that answer your original question, Senator Bobbitt, pulling up the bill?
Yes, it does. Can I?
Keep it at that. We'll go to Senator Hatch.
I just also wanted to clarify, to my understanding, I know that Gabe said that Dr. Fonseca said that they do have other portions of their budget. To my understanding, a very large bulk of their budget is used to directly pay students, if not all of it. So we're talking about student salaries here completely. So they may have other operating funds, but we're talking about student jobs here, and that gets real dicey, and pulling the plug on them, I don't know how. You'd be hard pressed to convince me to say yes, I guess.
Just a reminder, please keep any side chatter to a minimum, because it's really impossible to really lock into this conversation when 1,000 people are talking to literally everybody else. I'm gonna honor that to go to Chairperson Bobbitt, and then we'll go over here, I promise.
Looking at the bill that Gabe presented, I feel like my personal opinion, with like kind of relation to interpretation of the bylaws, I feel like our options available to us is either leave the 50,000 reduction in 27 or take 50,000 now, an additional 50,000, because I feel like taking the additional 50,000 now still complies with the spirit of the bill. It was very clear that that Finance Commission wanted a $100,000 reduction. And once again, this is my opinion. I am not a justice on the court. You guys have enough of you to outvote my opinion. I feel like from my interpretation that those are our options. We either leave it alone or we take an extra 50 this year.
Senator Warike, go ahead.
All right. So, speaking of locking in, that's what we're doing right now. So, not a big fan of 100,000 in 1 year. I feel like just regardless, it doesn't matter what entity you take it from. When you take basically half of what we're giving them, that's not a great look. So, I say leave the CDC alone, and I support Senator Enzi, where we are taking money from the 3 largest entities. Literally, like, we're talking 2 million and 1 million of what we're giving them. And we're taking, 9,000 to the Tillman, and then I think he mentioned some back to the special funds. That, in my mind, makes the most sense, because you're looking at the 3 biggest areas to move money from, and you're removing a very small portion of it to fix what we want, which is what the Tillman Foundation or Commission, Tilford Commission, to get money.
I'm going to say one thing there. I agree. I do. To me, I think we have overplayed that conversation with the CDC. I think the previous senators and senates have made that decision to create that 3-year fiscal cycle of reductions on that 3-year plan. I'm comfortable with that. I feel comfortable with what the Finance Commission made and those decisions behind that. I do not feel comfortable reducing their costs beyond that. I told you all that earlier. I maintain that same viewpoint. It's directly eliminating student jobs and student positions. It's not like they have a little program budget, those kinds of things. They don't ask for student fees funding for programming or for anything else beyond student salary positions, because that's the way that they stated that they're giving back to the student body. I don't feel comfortable even like bringing up CDC of reductions anymore, because at this point we need to talk about other options. And to me, a $50,000 reduction that they're already facing is well beyond the 10% that they would have seen. And with a totality of the $150,000, I just want to sit it where it's at and move on. We can still have that conversation, because I'm not the end all be all, you all are. But just a thought there of let's talk about more options there. And I will go to Senator Enzi. You've been waiting for a while. Thank you for being patient.
All right, I move to take 36 grand from SCB and put 9 grand to the Tilford, right? 9 grand to varsity esports, and 18 grand to the special projects.
Are you stating 9,000 to Tilford Commission or esports?
9,000 to Tilford, 9,000 to esports, and 18,000 to the special projects. and
To
capital
clarify, which esports item are you looking at? Are you looking
The
at
varsity esports.
Okay, thank you. You've got it. Okay, do I have a second for this motion? Seeing a second? Yeah, that was a $9,000 reduction to, $36,000 reduction to student engagement and belonging. $9,000 of that would go to the Tilford Commission and $9,000 to varsity esports. Is that correct?
I think so. 18 to.
And then
to special
$18,000 to
projects.
special projects and capital fund. Beautiful. There is a second, so we will move directly into the debating period on this line item. I'll go to Vice President Fawn.
I'm speaking in negation of this proposal. I do not believe taking $36,000 from the Student Engagement and Belonging Office is productive in the way in that not only would the programs already be affected for SEB, but also I don't believe that giving $9,000 to varsity esports is the right move, in addition to some of the other options. Based off the live stream, if you watching the videos, I am not convinced, and I'm still not convinced after their presentation that they gave today in public forum, that they deserve more funding. I really don't. With the scholarships and varsity esports, I don't feel comfortable giving them any more than was allocated within the bill that we have here today. And I understand the sentiment of adding more money into the special projects and capital fund, but $18,000 in the end goal in special projects isn't going to do too much, and I feel like that'll impact more students taking it away from SEB than it would be for this special projects and capital fund. But yeah, those are my thoughts.
Senator Murphy.
I'm not sure if this is allowed. Can I ask Senator Enzi a question?
You may not, but you can say your opinion, and then if Senator Enzi would like to speak in the debating period, they certainly can. So if you have something to say, please do. But make sure you're not directing any of your thoughts or feelings. Don't say other senators' names or those kinds of things.
Okay, just wanted to be
Amorphous beings we all are.
Okay, can I share my opinion then? Cool. I am going to be speaking in, not negation, just kind of a middle ground. Abstain. Thank you. I'm confused as to the reasoning for adding, giving varsity esports $9,000. I don't disagree with it. I also don't agree with it. I'm just confused as to why. I just don't see the reasoning.
Senator Beatty, did you have something? I saw your hand raised for just a moment. I was like, he's got something to say. You go ahead.
I will also be speaking in negation for the same point of varsity esports. It is my personal opinion and interpretation from watching the videos, reading through the binder, that largely the goals that they presented that they wanted to meet over the past 5 years were not met. And if you can't reach your goals, goals that I felt could have been reached with the amount of money they were getting, and then continuing to ask for a substantial amount more of money, I think you need to do some reflection and maybe stay. I think it's okay to be further down right now, and then try and do some reflection on that.
Senator Henley.
Point of clarification, is this one motion, like if we're voting for all three of those, or are they separate?
All the same motion.
Amazing. I would suggest that maybe to maybe split them up. I would be in favor of some of them, but I do think that people raise up some good questions. So I think if we split them up, there might be a better chance of certain ones passing. Just a suggestion.
I'll go to Vice President Fawn and then Senator Enzi.
I don't like this any more than you will, but I move to extend the meeting to 1 a.m.
Okay. Is there a second? Oh gosh, I second it. we will move directly into the voting period. Treasurer Wong?
Speaker Owens, may I add some context to SEB's budget line item?
Yes, let's do this vote really quick, and then we'll get directly to you. I guess, wait, I was going to say you have time, but never mind. This is to extend the meeting till 1 a.m. We do not have to go that long, but just so that we have the option.
Voting is open.
Hey, everybody, we're getting a little loud, and I don't want to gavel you, but I will, so.
We're missing one. We are still missing one. With 18 in favor, 2 against, and 2 abstentions, the motion passes.
Okay, let's keep the chatter a little bit at the minimum. Treasurer Wong?
Yes, so I just wanted to clarify why SEB's budget is so large, just to provide some historical context. So before it was called Student Engagement and Belonging, it was actually 3 different departments. One was the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, one was Campus Activities, and one was Student Engagement, Student Engagement and Leadership. Something like that. It's called SEAL. But the point is that this department has such a large budget line item because they absorbed 2 other entities. And so it's actually 3 separate entities that were just put into one. That's how they reestablished this line item. And so that's why their line item is so large. It's actually because it's 3 different departments all in one. So now it's just one department, but it used to be 3 different ones. But that's why it's so large.
Senator Knuckles?
I will say, Vice President Fons, your original comment, you stole the words right out of my mouth. I believe SEB is the single greatest beneficiary, is the single greatest benefit to students out of any organization on campus. I am going to be against any reduction in their budget. I already don't like how their budget was reduced, but I'm willing to live with it because of the massive budget shortfall. I do not think we should take any more money from them. I think that is the absolute max amount of money that we should take, is what was recommended by the Finance Commission.
Senator Barnes?
I've got a point of information and then a possible follow-up. How would an amendment to the original motion work, or does it have to be a friendly amendment?
So, depending on what it is, I probably won't accept it, because general sentiment of the body, I believe, would not carry a 2/3. So I'd rather us fail that motion and then bring individual motions or other motions beyond that. So I wouldn't be in favor of that at this point, but you can certainly give it a shot and tell me what it is, and I'll tell you.
I would like to give it a shot.
Okay, you go ahead.
I would like to remove the amounts put towards, I believe it's the varsity esports and the special projects account, and only leave up the line item of $9,000 for the Tilford Commission.
Seeing as anticipating a potential motion that would rescind this motion and bring separate motions, would you consider allowing that to happen before we continue?
Yes.
Okay. Senator Enzi?
I actually moved to divide the question.
Oh, boy. We can do it. Okay. So division of the question allows for us to vote separately on different aspects of a motion. For this particularly, I'll ask your clarifying, but here's my assumption. You want to individually vote on each of the items separately. Now remind me, and you probably know this, I need a second, and then it's debatable. We haven't done it for a while, so it's...
I don't remember, and my computer died.
That's okay, that's okay. So we'll operate on my assumption of it. Heck yeah. So I will need a second, and then I will allow for it to be debatable, and then we'll move into the voting on dividing the question itself. Do we have a second for the division of question? Seeing a second by Chairperson Bobbitt, that moves us directly into debating period on this item. Is there anyone who'd like to speak during this time on dividing these items into 3 separate line items? Senator Stinnett.
Promise, no hard feelings, but I do think there's a general sentiment that people are not going to want to pull from SEB, so I would much rather fail the motion and just us have like a restart instead of just directly trying to pull everything from SEB and then going through the whole process and everything.
Thank you. Senator Hatch.
I'm going to echo those sentiments. I'm going to speak in negation to division of the question, because honestly, I'd vote no to all of these suggestions. These budgets are tight, and big does not mean that it's not a strapped budget. And I think that that's really important for people to remember. Like, I've heard multiple conversations about campus rec, and I would be very scared of cutting them at all. We're talking about, again, 4 employees that affect the entire student body at campus rec. And that's just one example of some of these bigger line items and the amount of work that they do. Varsity esports, I think that they got a very fair allocation. The Tilford Commission, again, I believe that that money needs to come from somewhere else. The Special Projects Fund is cutting from all of these really tight budgets is going to directly impact students. All cutting from the Special Projects Fund is going to do is limit the amount of extra funding Senate has for, again, special projects. And I can't see the last item anymore. Special Projects Fund. Again, I don't want to put money back into that because I think that we would be treading on territory of just taking money to fill our coffers, and I don't think that that looks good at all.
Please raise your hand if you want to speak so I can really survey the room. We'll go to Senator Lewis.
If we divide this question, like Hatch said, we will be forced to painstakingly declare why you should not vote for any of these 3 motions for many minutes. And we can appeal to your tiredness because I know you're tired and you want to vote yes just to get it over with. Vote no now to get it over with faster than you would if you vote yes later.
Senator Barnes.
Can I get another point of information?
You certainly can.
Am I allowed to say, like, I'd like to bring my original proposed amendment to the table?
We have to vote on division of the question first. If that fails, I'll consider it.
Okay.
But let's vote on this one first.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on division of the question? Seeing none, we'll move directly into the... Yeah, that's so real. Voting period on this time.
Voting is now open. We're still missing one. Okay, there we go. With 4 in favor, 18 against, and 0 abstentions, the motion fails.
Did you want to speak, Kylie? If you want the floor, okay. I'm just making sure. Sorry, I'm getting messages from like 1,000 people right now. Okay, this brings us back into the original amendment proposed by Senator Enzi. I'm gonna go to Senator Enzi first, and then we'll go back over.
If the seconder would, I rescind my amendment.
You do not need the seconder's permission to do so, but thank you. That moves us. Oh, that's cool. Anyway, he says it's cool anyway, so that's beautiful teamwork there. Okay, that brings us back into consideration of the student fees and item as a full thing. Yeah, ooh, it's late. It rescinded. So I have a thought here that I'd like to propose before we continue. Thoughts on bringing it to committee of the whole, this body to committee of the whole, so that we can genuinely talk about this stuff and do the hand raises and stuff without consistently having to do the whole motion, everybody hates it or everybody likes it or whatever, and then it fails, we have to rescind and stuff like that. It would bring us to a point where I think we can get this done faster. I'm actually going to just make the motion. I'm going to motion to bring us to committee of the whole. Do I have a second? Seeing a second. Now that is that 2/3 or simple? Beautiful. Okay. It is unfortunately debatable though. If anyone has, yes, I know. I'm so sorry. Maybe if no one has thoughts. If anyone has
information.
Oh, yes. Go ahead.
I thought you had mentioned earlier that this whole thing was like a formal process and couldn't be put into committee of the whole unless I misunderstood that.
So earlier, what Chairperson Bobbitt was asking if right now that we could do like hand raises and those kinds of things. I stated that we cannot because we are in formal session. If we take it to committee of the whole, then we can, if that makes more sense. Is there any debate on the item of bringing us to committee of the whole? Seeing none. That moves us to the voting period, a simple majority vote to bring us to committee of the whole.
Voting is open. Just a offer. If you wait to click the button until I tell you voting's open, then you probably won't click it before voting's open, and you won't have to repress it. That said, we're missing 2 votes, but. Then I just remembered I just put into the attendance that the vote changed, so that's my own bad. With 18 in favor, 2 against, and 0 abstentions, the motion passes. And for clarification, simple majority is now 11 and 2/3 is now 14.
Beautiful. We're in committee of the whole. Now I'm going to tell you how I want this to operate. I want you to raise your hand if you have a suggestion of, I want this org to have more funding, I want this org to have more funding, and then we will consider some thoughts from the audience of who else agrees with that and those kinds of proceedings forward. So raise your hand if you have an idea of, I want this organization to have more funding, and tell me what it is. Morgan.
I would love for us to pull some money from the RSC. Now, I don't know the sentiment over that.
Just tell me who you want it to go to.
I want it to go to the Tilford Foundation or Commission.
Thank you. Can I get a raise of hands of who's in favor of adding money to the Tilford Commission? That's more than 2/3. So that brings us into that. Now I need considerations, because now we're just on that line item. I need considerations of where do you want to pull it? Morgan, tell me, where do you want to pull it? The RSC? Okay, who would be in favor of taking it from the RSC? Please raise your hand right now. Okay, that's not 2/3. So other people tell me, where do you want to pull it? Gavin, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Do I need to use this?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we're still live streaming.
I can yell. Can we take it from the CDC?
Who wants to take it from the CDC? Raise your hand.
It's $9 grand.
Okay, everybody, I need you to just lock into only what I'm saying. No voices, just raise your hand when I tell you to. Gavin? Who would be willing to take it to the CDC? Raise your hand. Nope, not an option. Next. Go ahead, Riley.
Have we, sorry, have we thought about taking the 9,000 from the Sunflower?
Who would, hey, everybody. We are getting this done, and we are getting it done efficiently and quickly. I need you to agree with me there. Who is willing to take it from the Sunflower? Please raise your hand. Doesn't quite look like a viable option. If you think you can, Raf, go ahead.
What about the just Student Government Association in general? Not the special funds, just SJ in general.
Are you, hello? Are you referencing the SGA scholarships under the EOF fund? Where are you referencing that? Which line item? Tell me.
Line 12, it's right under special projects.
Okay, who is in favor of taking it from line 12? Not an option. So sorry. Oh, okay. Well, when I say that, raise your hand right when I say that and not like 2 minutes later, please. Who's in favor of taking it from line item 12? All of you that just raised your hand, what happened in that 2 second? Okay, so that's a couple of you. If you can swing some votes, we'll see, but doesn't look viable as it is. Other options. Rosiah, you go ahead.
Can we get like what we think about taking it from the student, or the special projects and capital fund?
Thank you. Who would take it from the Special Projects and Capital Fund? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Tyler, is that a yes or no? Raph, is that a yes? You know how to raise your hand. Please do it higher. Okay, so that looks like it could be a 2/3. So team who voted no, tell me your thoughts on that. Gavin?
Yeah, we're already taking nearly 23% away from the special projects fund. There are a lot of line items on here where we take less than 2% away from, and I think it'd be very viable to look into those and remove, I don't know what the percent would be exactly, but I think there are much more viable options.
Thank you. Kylie? Someone give our lovely student body president the mic.
I'm kicking Andrew out of his spot. This might be kind of a hot take of an opinion, but I would not really encourage us, just because we're looking at these line items with bigger budgets, to just start pulling from them because their budget is larger. Respectfully, with so much respect, love, kindness, everything. The Special Projects and Capital Fund, in my opinion, is kind of a luxury that we have. And I'm not saying, like Andrew Hatch said earlier, that we should use it as our cash cow, but I think for something this minute, there's nothing that we could do with Special Projects and Capital Fund realistically for $9,000 that's going to make as big of an impact as funding Tilford Commission with this money would make. So let's just do that. Please and thank you. Love you all so much.
Josh, share with the class.
The finance people, whatever it is, spent hours working on this, and they based it off of what they knew. And I would just like to pass as is, because that's what we should do. That's all I'll say.
Thank you, Josh. Anyone else who voted no? Did you vote no on that? Okay. Andrew, go ahead.
I think at this point, I'm with Josh. I think we should just pass the budget as is.
Gavin?
I've got multiple points. I think we should look into setting a amount that we want to remove from before we actually go ahead and take from somewhere. And I also think we should look into the option of taking from multiple places instead of just one place. Thank you.
Jaden?
Yeah, okay, first thought. I originally voted no on taking from the Special Projects Fund because I also agree with the sentiment that the Finance Commission did their job. And I said my piece earlier about them having other means of funding. That's not the point. But I think at this point, I also agree with the previous two sentiments that just to pass as is. I know as devastating as it is that certain people are having to take budget cuts this year, that's just the name of the game. We're missing almost $1 million. In this circumstance, there's obviously going to be budget cuts, and we're sorry, but that's just how it has to be.
Before we continue, team, it's late. And I know the majority of us would like money from Tilford, for Tilford. So I need us to make some more recommendations and then get to the point where we move on, okay? I'm going to go to Adriana, then Andrew, then Ryan, then Katrina. Be quick about it.
I think we have so deeply lost the plot to the idea that we have decided that, oh no, it's just been so long, let's just pass it as is. The majority of us agree that Tilford came up here and they gave a presentation. They said, I apologize for the way that I presented to the Finance Commission. Finance Commission, while they do have a great idea of what's going on, they didn't have all the information. We got new information today. And the majority of us agree that we should fund them at a larger amount, given the fact that just because the Finance Commission decided on a recommendation that is beautiful and gorgeous, and if we had had that information when they decided on the final budget, I would agree with everyone. However, we got new information. Stop saying that. I would say also, we need to figure out where it's coming from. My opinion, instead of deciding, oh, this has a bigger budget, or the blah, 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 like Kylie said, taking it from someone that doesn't have a face, like this Special Projects Fund, feels better to me than to nitpick different budgets because they're bigger. Instead, if we take it from this amount, then we can not only feel better about ourselves in the fact that we're not like taking it from specific people, but we can also just fund these people. I feel like we've deeply lost the plot, and I know I sound really upset, but it's probably because I'm upset about the fact that we're just like, whatever.
Advisor Fonseca, did you have something?
This happens every year. And here's the thing that I'm going to encourage you all to remember. Whether they are or not, 17,000 people are watching you. Today, tomorrow, doesn't matter. They are watching you. And with the respect I have for all of you, this is an extremely messy process. We are getting nowhere. And this is me not lecturing you, because I'm not your father or your mother or anything. This is me offering you the most solid advice that we have seen for the past 7 years that I've been here and we have done this process. That this one, quite possibly, is the messiest. So I'm going to I'm going to give you a couple thoughts for you to think about. The only people who can change something in this bill is either a 2/3 vote of this body or the people who originally proposed it. So either fail the bill and send it back to them and tell them to fix it based off of the things you have already heard, because many of them have heard you, and or the chair is also present, pass the bill and be done with it. At the same time, a proposal was made to not increase student fees, which meant we made significant deep cuts that will last for fiscal years to come. Meaning next year students will have less than you have, the year after that will have less than you have. We are going to get nowhere of trying to agree on this in this space. And I'm not even saying it's because you're incapable of doing it. I'm not saying that. It's just we have different thoughts of how we're trying to get to the end zone here. That's a sports reference, I think. I don't know. But I am encouraging you to think about this process. And when it was written so that this didn't happen, so that the Senate didn't repeat what the people we put in office to do, the Finance Commission, to do their job. They brought you a recommendation. You either like it, you don't, or you attempt to change it. We went through 6 votes and have passed not a single one of them, and we are in this bill at almost 1 o'clock. And I am encouraging us to think differently about this process as itself. So, again, a proposal was made. It was made based off of the information that we have on the circumstances that we have, and I can't imagine everyone in that commission is thrilled about the recommendation that they made. But it is the reality of what was made. We also made a decision not to increase the fee, but that came with a consequence. That means there's no new money we can put into the budget to soften some of the blow. That decision was made. So you either need to face yourself, and if I were in your shoes, and the perspective that I'm trying to give you is this. We've gotten nowhere after 4 hours of trying to debate on this bill. So either suspend read 1 and 2 and 3 and vote on this bill and be done, fail the bill, suspending vote or read 2 and 3, fail it and send it back to the commission and tell them, you've heard our thoughts, we'd like you to fix it. Or that's it. It's 1 or 2. Or keep trying to amend something that we are getting nowhere at doing. At some point, this meeting has to end. And at some point, REAK 1 will be done. And I encourage you not to waste this moment either. Because next week, then we're back in this space again on a bill you can't even touch again. Either of those decisions suck. It is either approving the bill that we know not everyone is supportive of, but that the commission did the best they could with the information that they have and the resources that they have, and trying to bring something that didn't increase fees, or send it back and tell them to do it again, and to get you a proposal that you might support. That may come with an increase of fees, it may not, but it gets you a better idea of where we're trying to get to. They have an easier way to do it than what we do in this space. Keep doing this in committee of the whole. The 17,000 people watching are looking at you and saying, what are they doing? And we have an election in 2 weeks, and I would love for them to vote and not vote because of this mess either. So I am throwing those thoughts out to you. I say you take the final vote and suspend the the second and third read. You got to get the 2/3 to do that, and either pass the bill or fail it, because you're not making much progress in other circumstances as well. There's no new money. We've heard the thing about pulling from the special project account. There's not support there. We've heard these things, and I'm just trying to throw some thoughts of how to help you get through this process to get something done in this process. Because this Senate adjourns in 3 weeks, whether a bill has passed or not.
I have something to add also. I need you all to make concessions in this space. Just because you have a thought of how it should be done does not mean the broader body will support that. And 2/3 is, ooh, it's a hefty price when it comes to passing that line item. You need to make concessions. You have all agreed, most of you, have agreed that the Tilford Commission should receive additional funding. I need you to live and let live of where it comes from. When it comes to those items, some of you are like iffy. I need you to be like, well, if I'm iffy, then I'm a yes or I'm a no. I need you to sit with that. More to that too, I disagree with the sentiment that you need to pass or fail the bill as it is now. It's clear you want changes to be made. I advise you to do that. Moreover, you were all in a unique position that the Finance Commission was also in with that $900,000 budget shortfall. I understand that you all are having some thoughts. You are also having some concerns and some worry about some of these line items. You want to add money, you don't know where to go because this place is already getting a major cut and those kinds of things. That is not, it's obviously not your fault, but it's your responsibility to make those decisions now. And I need you all to do that with professionalism in this space. I'm seeing side chatter. I'm seeing that. But I'm not hearing the people who are talking to their neighbor talking out loud to raising your hand. And even when I am seeing that, you're talking to people and then we can't hear what another person is saying. So I know you didn't retain that information. And then again, we're getting no spot. So thank you, Gabe. You bring up a fantastic point. We have to get somewhere, which is why I'm saying I need you to listen to where I'm trying to lead us. I need you to follow with me. Okay? Can we do that? Beautiful. When we talk about the Tilford Commission, that is the only one I'm talking about right now. I need you at all to make some concessions here of where it's coming from. We've already talked to the Special Projects and Capital Fund and those kinds of things. Obviously, none of those are getting supported by a 2/3 vote. So I need you to make concessions here. Ryan, go ahead.
I'm going to completely agree with Dr. Fonseca. At this point, I believe that we should fail this bill. Now, just hear me out on this. The Finance Commission has a lot less rules about this. They would have a much easier time changing this. I say we fail it, send it back with the recommendation that they somehow, some way get $9,000 to the Tilford Commission.
Thank you. Cynthia.
I don't agree with that, sorry. For one, I think the consensus is over the last 4 hours is that there's really only that one line item that we would like to change, which is the Tilford Commission. We had other ones that were not passed and not voted on very well. So, again, the representative came in, gave her points, apologized. But going back to the very beginning of the night, so did Vice President Miller. There were errors, and it's numbers. It's going to happen. There's only one that we need to vote on. It's $9,000. It's not $118,000 that was taken away. Again, if we're doing 9,000, they requested the 10. The difference with the 1,000, and I understand that everybody else was taking the $1,000 off of what they requested. So I'm fine, 9,000. I'm fine with less than 9,000. I just believe that they should get something and that it really should come again from the Special Projects Fund. Because someone said that does not have a face, and it doesn't have a face. It's a lot easier to take from there. I understand that people don't want to touch it. It's been already depleted, but It's $9,000 for an organization that helps students. It's something that, I mean, easily done. I don't understand why we just cannot agree just to take the money. Again, one item, Tilford Commission. It's not like we have 5 different organizations that we're voting on. We're voting on one organization. Can we come to a consensus where to get the money from? I believe the Special Projects Fund, easy. We've given $90,000 to another cause that supposedly helps students. And yes, there was some debate, but I'm sure that debate, I was sitting here, did not last 4 hours. It's ridiculous.
Hatch.
So I'm really resenting this conversation that we're having about either pass it or fail it tonight. To me, that is shirking our responsibilities, and this is a democratic process that we are all clearly in favor. Most of the body is clearly in favor of funding Tilford Commission. Most of the body is actually still in favor of Special Projects Fund. It's not 2/3. And I want to reiterate to everybody that this was a very unique year. The woman that came to present told us in Finance Commission that she was new to her position, maybe a little over a year. That just for watching the Finance Commission, I'm sorry I said us, watching the Finance Commission, she's new to this position. This was a very difficult year. She did not come prepared. She came in here and she apologized to us. And then she gave an adequate presentation based off of the information that we were given on all of the other presentations. Every other organization had their funding bolstered by the Special Projects Fund. Every single one. We pulled Finance Commission pulled $450,000 from the Special Projects Fund to bolster the funds for every other organization. This is in the name of fairness, giving them money back at this point. Deeply resentful for how this conversation has gone. We know that the money from the Special Projects Fund will not giving this small an amount will not negatively impact students on campus. We know taking money from other ones will. I don't understand how we can't get 1 or 2 more votes for $9,000 from a fund that is not earmarked for things that directly benefit students right now. It's very upsetting.
Diana.
We've heard enough thoughts to where I'd like to see a hand vote again.
I was going to do that right after you spoke. But I will go Andrew first because it looks like you're really excited to share.
There's no secret. I am always firmly opposed to spending money from the Special Projects Fund. My position on this has remained consistent throughout the entire year, dating back into the previous session. This is not what this money was approved for. That being said, I am willing to make the compromise. I will put my support behind it, and I believe others will join me in moving $9,000 from the Special Projects Fund to the Tilford Commission and then being done. I could be completely off my rocker, but I do not feel that there is any will or any desire to bolster any other fund. And at this point, in the grand scheme of things, SGA has spent more on worse causes. Let's pass this. Let's get out of week 1, and let's do some real good with the ADHD scholarship.
Okay, Gavin, go ahead, and then I'm going to do the hand vote, I promise, but he's really been raising his hand real high.
I would like to know if it would please the Senate if we looked into splitting this into 3 and taking from 3 different places instead of 1.
No. Okay.
No? Okay.
I'm so sorry. It does not seem like that's happening. Okay. I'm going to go to a hand vote again, one more time on the Special Projects and Capital Fund. Whatever figure you decide, 9,000, 10,000, 5,000, I don't care. Are you willing to take money from the Special Projects Fund for the Tilford Commission? Raise your hand nice and high. I'm not going to count because that's more than 2/3. Okay. That's fantastic. Oh my gosh, yay. Now I'm going to move on because we're done with that. So Please tell me if anyone else has any other additional motions that they would like to make of you want to add money to another organization. Andrew?
I'm not going to die on this hill the way that a lot of these conversations have gone tonight, but I know that there were conversations between CAPS and several senators for funding them with $64,000 from somewhere to, no? Oh, never mind then.
Any other thoughts? I don't want to see any surprise motions of, I want to add money, $100,000 to XYZ or whatever. I want you to all hash it out right now. So going once, twice, 3 times. I'm motioning to bring us out of committee of the whole. Do I have a second? Seeing a second. This is debatable, but I'm not going to take debate, so we're going to move directly into the voting period on this item. To bring us out of committee of the whole, back to formal session. Any questions about that? Beautiful.
Voting is open. And the motion passes unanimously.
Beautiful. I have a motion to give. I want to take $9,000 from the Special Projects and Capital Fund and take it to the Tilford Commission to bring their total to $9,000. Do I have a second? Oh boy, seeing multiple seconds. Is there any debate on this item? Okay. Moving us directly into the voting period on this item. By the way, this doesn't give money. This isn't guaranteed funding. It's just so we can vote on it next week. Just a reminder if we've forgotten that. Just want to make sure.
Voting is open. With 19 in favor, 0 against, and 1 abstention, the motion passes.
Light snaps, move on. Okay, I don't know why I see bags being moved. Okay, no. Okay, this moves us back into the debating period on the overall item. And a reminder to the body, you cannot touch this when it comes to amendments, anything else, next week or the week after. Which means next week, we can just vote on those line items that were pulled. Any other discussion on this item or amendments to propose? Chairperson Bobbitt.
I actually have a point of information. Because we are the body that deals with special projects and Tilford has already had an opportunity to present, is there a way to forego and just pass it tonight, skipping week 2 and 3?
Nope.
No,
it has to be a 3-week process.
Yeah. Well, I didn't clarify, because I will have to invite Tilford next week, so I would like some guidance as to whether you would like me to invite them back to the Senate meeting or not. So that's one thing. And 2, you can't vote on the amendment tonight because a formal amendment has been made. Next week, you can suspend the 3rd read and vote on the bill as presented if this motion passes, but you can't do it tonight because now you have to table it for the week because a formal motion has passed. You have to table it for the week. When we're done, I would like guidance as to whether you would like me to invite the Tilford to come back. And technically, SGA deserves this chance to defend itself on its other side too, but that's up to the president to decide. But I would like guidance as to whether you would like me to invite the representative from Tilford because our process would require us to do so.
My perspective, and I'll get your opinions too, is we can certainly invite them if they're like, hey, $9,000 isn't enough, or those kinds of things, so they can have a moment to say something. But ultimately, my thought process too, and we'll talk about this later, is that we vote on this line item, or well, obviously because it's done, but vote on the bill itself, vote on the line item in the bill itself next week, and then suspend the rules to not have the 3rd week. That's a future motion later. But I say we invite Tilford because that's standard procedure. Can I just get a light nod? I know that's like not formal. Okay, beautiful. That's our recommendation. That's the SGA's recommendation that we do invite the Tilford Commission, or if someone from SGA would like to come to defend the Special Projects and Capital Fund, they certainly can, wink, wink, to President Howard. Seeing no debate on this item, we move into the voting period on the full item itself, the full bill itself as it is, with those 2 line items being pulled for next week's consideration. Any other questions before we? Beautiful.
All right, and we have to do a roll call vote, so we'll go ahead and get that started.
Madam Speaker,
Advisor Fonseca?
what vote are you taking?
We're taking on the full bill itself.
That's not tonight.
To move it to next week?
No, that's it. So now you're going back to ask, are there any other budget items to pull? And then the bill is automatically tabled till next week.
Oh, stunning. Okay, beautiful. Then we're done. And then we get to move on. Not even a full vote. You said we had to do a roll call vote. You made it seem like that's his fault. That's his fault. Okay, and before we continue to our next line items, I had the thought of tabling all of these items. Well, chill it out, everybody. Simply because it is 12:29, we do have until 1 a.m., so we can consider finishing all of those quickly. So can I just get a thumbs up here if we want to just continue and keep just getting those done, keep trucking? We're going to keep trucking. Beautiful. That moves us to 6.2.
Active request to approve SB-67-178, authorizing an expenditure from the Special Projects and Capital Fund for the creation of an ADHD, Autism, or Learning Disability Testing Support Fund.
The author is here and would like to speak, so you have the floor.
Hey, party people. How we doing? I am here. I am here by the grace of God. We have a meeting at 8 a.m. with the College of Applied Studies. I can't wait. Splendid day. Anyways, I didn't bring my computer up because it died, but you all probably have computers, probably can read, hopefully. It says we're pulling $10,000 from the Special Projects and Capital Fund to fund the creation of an ADHD, Autism, and Learning Disability Scholarship. This will take place in fiscal year 26, so this fund will not take place for the remainder of this session, but next year. Any questions? Comments?
Are there any
concerns?
questions? Senator Murphy, and then we'll go to Senator Enzi.
Just for clarification, this is connecting back to the one passed a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
Just want to be sure.
Senator Enzi.
So the starting and current balance on that, is that not accurate then because of the changes to special?
I don't know why we do
So,
it like that.
yeah, we base it on what the Special Projects and Capital Fund totality amount is, and then we subtract from there. I seriously don't know why we do it. But no, that doesn't reflect the other changes we've made, obviously. So you're correct in assuming that that's silly. But that would just be that $10,000 removed from there. I know it's silly, but that's just the way we do it.
For
Advisor
reference,
Fonseca?
there's $500,000 in that account.
That's correct. As the Finance Commission did not utilize any of those funds, that $500,000 still exists. So it'd be the minus 500. Any other questions? Beautiful. Seeing none. Thank you so much. We move into the debating period on this item. Is there anyone who'd like to speak? Chairperson Bobbitt.
Motion's passed with unanimous consent.
I'll consider it, even though I'm hesitant, because I'm like, this is such an important thing. It'd be nice to get a formal vote, but it's fine. Is there any objections to approving this bill? Wait, don't I need a second for that? No. Answering my own questions here is late. Is there any objections to approving this bill through unanimous consent? Seeing none, it's approved. Give yourselves a clap. Goodness. Now we move to Section 7, consideration of pending business, 7.1.
Act on request to approve AR-67-016 Campus Parking Improvement Act.
First of all, I want to say I'm a little offended by the lack of commotion for this bill. So rude. I spent so many hours working on this. So watch yourselves. I will say the only things that were changed in committee last time were to add a section that just says, be it further resolved that the association requests that parking services be lenient in handing out summer parking violations at the request of Senator Mallard to address just summer parking considerations for the fact that you're not required to have a pass, but et cetera, et cetera. The other thing is I plan to make a motion to amend later during the debate period that would just add a section that says, be further resolved, the association urges parking services to stop using the phrase handicapped and instead use accessible. For example, accessible parking spot instead of handicapped parking spot in written informal communications at the behest of our advocate Wassinger and because nobody uses handicapped anymore. So any questions?
Are there any questions? Okay. Seeing none, we will move directly into the debating period on this item. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Vice President Fawn.
Yeah, so as I mentioned in the executive report I brought for this resolution for a rough read before the university's Parking and Transportation Committee. The only thing they really had any questions or sought more clarification was for that added line, be it further resolved that the association requests that parking services be lenient in handing out summer parking violations. They were kind of desiring to have that be lenient clause be more elaborated upon, and I'm wondering if we could do something like maybe giving out more warnings like within the first few weeks of summer, or give some more advice on like what parking services can do differently, because being lenient can be a pretty broad thing.
Anyone else who would like to speak during this time? Chairperson Adriana Owens.
I guess in regards to what Vice President Fawn mentioned, I guess when we decided to make that specific change in committee, it was a combination of two different ones that I was presented by Senator Mallard, and we ended up just selecting this as the addition because we felt as if the other two were kind of like the same thing, so it was redundant. So we wanted to add this, especially because the original behest of the senator was the idea that we wanted to make sure that prospective students weren't getting parking violations when a lot of them are unaware of the parking policies in place. However, the committee found that there's no way to really track who is a prospective student per se, as well as the next one was in regards to orientation, which already happens during the summer, so we thought that this would address the concern of the summer parking violations in respect to prospective students, while also leaving it vague enough for the parking people to understand. I feel as if we don't really need to change it, considering the fact that once this passes in the Senate, Matthew and I will be bringing a proposal, and if we want more like specifications, we can just do that within the proposal. Hopefully that answers that question. And if so, I would like to motion to make an amendment to add a section somewhere, I don't care where, be further resolved, the association urges parking services to stop using the phrase handicapped and instead use accessible, for example, accessible parking spot in written informal communication.
Go ahead and copy that. Shoot
Already
that
sent it to
email
him.
to, oh, beautiful. Your brain.
I sent it to him hours ago.
Stunning.
Anyway,
I just
the
really love
reason
that.
behind that is just because no one uses that anymore. That phrasing is, the history is disgusting. Anyway.
Do I have a second to that motion? Seeing multiple seconds. Would anyone like to speak on that motion to include that amendment to the bill? I'll speak to it. I think it's a great idea. I think we can always learn from past situations of verbiage that's more inclusive, and I think it's a great change to make. That's all I have to say. Any other thoughts on that? Beautiful. None. We move directly into the voting period on this amendment.
Voting is open. I'm missing one. Guys, I'm really sorry, but I'm still missing one. Please make sure it's on. Okay. With 20 in favor, the motion passes unanimously.
Beautiful. Chairperson Adriana Owens? Yes.
I need to give myself some flowers because I have, listen, I'm sorry it's late, but I just need this to happen because I often don't feel as if I'm valued. But this sorry, don't look at me like that. This resolution has been in fruition since I stepped foot on campus. And I would say that, like, while this is just a big document to you all, it's like a collective work of like hundreds of hours for me and, I need a second. For me and my committee members, and I'm so proud of everyone in my committee who worked on it or has ended up leaving who worked on it. Also, I expect that when this passes to get a big round of applause, and that's all.
I have words to say too. Because I know with our accommodations legislation, we just passed it really quickly, so it's important to give flowers when it's needed. And I was already going to do that, so. I think when it comes to parking at this university, we can all agree it's abysmal. And we can be honest to ourselves, and the university agrees too. They've literally talked about it many times. But in conversations with administration and other conversations, it's been clear they're not willing to make any changes until this year, and last year also. But this year, the parking committee itself, since its inception, and also by its inception, I mean it's combining in 2020 of like all of the different things and many items, this year really made a commitment to clean up those processes and really made a commitment to say, we need to make some changes. And with that too, making commitments to like have meetings that are like, hey, how can we better this process? How can we make those changes? I know Vice President Fawn has been on that meeting, very diligent, thank you. And I last year was on the parking committee as well, and I can say, oh boy, that process was wild. So this is a great first step, and as much as this legislation brings us into a step on a lot of important issues, Chairperson Adriana Owens, Vice President Fawn, and many of the Student Services members have made concessions for after this bill passes to say, how can we ensure that this is implemented? And so this has really been a labor of love, a lot of considerations, a lot of amendments and those kinds of things. It's been tabled and tabled and then tabled again and then brought back to the floor and finally for its final read. So I just want to give a really big shout out to all of you. What a great piece of work that we're finally saying, hey, we need to better this system because ooh boy, parking is not, she's not a beaut, she's not doing it. So I'm glad that we're making this effort, and I think it's great. I think what the work that we have all done here, and by we I mean you guys, is really beautiful. So that's all I have to say. If any other thoughts on this? Senator Mallard, and then we'll go to Senator Lewis.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like I said, I submitted a few things, and I know that this is something that everyone has talked about and all put together and for multiple years, and so, and I know, I will say even though we do have some bad stuff with parking, I will say that we do have one of the cheaper options for parking, which is one of the really nice things about WSU. But there's still a lot of stuff to fix, and there's still a lot of things that even after this is passed, I'll say that there's still some stuff that needs to be fixed. But this is one of the biggest steps that we have. I'll also say I would like that a copy of this resolution be sent to Guy Schroeder, the University Police Chief, and then also with that, I'm sorry, I will make a motion to approve by unanimous consent.
Are there any objections to adopting the legislation as such? Seeing an objection. Senator Lewis, did you have something to say as well?
I have an issue with a little bit of the wording in it and I think I want to make an amendment.
Okay, share with the team. What are you thinking? What are your issues there?
So on one of the, I'm so sorry, but on one of the, be it further resolved, says the association requests that WSU parking garage remain open after 5. The parking garage, I believe you can always park in it at any time. If you mean it, you want it to be like the rest of the parking lots where after 5 you can park in it and you won't get a violation. So you don't, meaning that you don't have to pay for parking after 5. I would like to change that to read that the parking garage be free parking after 5 p.m. and then the rest remain as is.
Did you get that, Gabe? Beautiful. Is there a second to that motion? Seeing multiple seconds, we move into the debating period on that item. This is the time for also the author to speak to that point if that's something we're wanting to. Any debate on this amendment? Chairperson Adrian Owens?
I'm fine with this. I don't know. I felt like it's sufficiently answered even without the amendment. But I'm fine if we want to amend it to add that, I guess.
Stunning. Any other thoughts? Seeing none, we'll move directly into the voting period on this amendment.
It's open. With 18 in favor, 1 against, and 1 abstention, the motion passes.
Senator Mallard,
Motion approved by unanimous consent.
are there any objections to approving this bill with unanimous consent? Seeing none, it's approved. Big claps. I hope that was sufficient with the big claps. She has a headache, so it'll be okay. Okay. Okay, then I'll hand over the gavel to Vice President Fawn while I do my bill.
Okay, we'll move into, let me pull this up real quick. 7.2, act on request to approve SB-67-176, changing the attendance policy. The speaker is here, Suze.
I'll be quick. I hope you read it. Legislative Affairs, we made some of those couple of changes that we talked about. That includes all the purple is what we changed, and if it hasn't been changed, it was moved around. Confusing, I know, but it's all right. So we condensed point 4 and 5 and 6 all to the new 3 so that it looked like all of these items, all these meetings and those kinds of things had the same excuse form policy. Otherwise, it looked a little bit scattered. And then we also added that senators can only accrue 1 unexcused or excused absence in a calendar day. That way, if a senator is gone for committee of the whole, is gone for, Senate itself and then legislative committees, they wouldn't be able to accrue 3 absences and then be gone if it was unexcused, simply because interpretation, the speaker would be able to do that. I don't think they should be able to do that because that's silly. But yeah, general sentiments too. This just changes the attendance policy, so it's a little more in line with what we had a couple years ago. It also ensures that our senators are meeting up with their responsibilities as a senator and that those sabbaticals that were passed last session are able to actually be utilized and used rather than a service that isn't necessarily needing to be used because the attendance policy is so lenient. Any questions?
Does anyone have any questions? Seeing none, thank you. We'll now move into the debate period. Does anyone else have Senator Bobbitt?
I move to approve by unanimous consent.
Are there any objections?
Wait, can we do that for bylaw amendments? Oh, Slay.
Seeing one from Senator Hatch, does anyone else have anything to say in debate? Senator Hatch.
So kind of along the discussion topic that I brought up last time, there are disabilities that people have that would cause them to not want to take a sabbatical because they are unpredictable disabilities. Like, think about things like fibromyalgia, cluster headaches. These are pain-related disabilities that the pain is so intense that it can actually be mentally debilitating and cause people to not be able to fulfill their obligations on specific days. Those days can repeatedly happen on Wednesdays, just like any other day. Allowing the automatic removal of 3 excused absences to 1 unexcused absence at the discretion of the speaker still leaves every piece of power in the speaker's power, and then also allows them to be aware that people have specific disabilities that could possibly infringe in their ability to avoid 9 absences. I can see an argument that if you're getting 9 absences, why are you a senator? I can also see that many people do a lot of work in this space with the time that they are given and can do work on days outside of actual Senate days. So that doesn't mean that just because you missed Senate that you are not doing any work for the student body that entire week.
I'll go to Speaker Owens.
Just Senator Owens right now. So I'd like to propose an amendment to Chapter 1, Section 1, Point C, 3C, yeah, we all see it, to read 3 excused absences, 3 excused absences will make up 1 unexcused absence at the discretion of the speaker. I think that'll accommodate any potential things like that at the discretion of the speaker if there's ever any issue.
Do we have a second? Seeing a second from Senator Murphy, we will now go into the debate period for that. Does anyone have anything to say in debate? Sarah Moment.
I'd personally speak in opposition to this proposed amendment. While I understand the idea of it and the complexities that may lead to this being necessary, I do think that this kind of, it dilutes the bill to the point that the changes I ultimately think that it creates enough of a hole that we may find ourselves in that same exact position again, where perhaps we have a lenient speaker who excuses absences for the entire semester, and then we still have senators who aren't actually senators because they never come to meetings. But that's, like I said, I know this probably is not going to pass, but yeah. Or, like, my sentiments are not going to be reflected, but.
Okay, I'll go to Chairperson Owens.
Personally, I would rather have a lenient speaker who allows accommodations for individuals than a strict speaker who disregards a person's disability, who then means that people with disabilities can't function in the same space. Not that I'm saying anyone is advocating or saying that, but I would say I agree with the amendment. I think it allows for more leeway in those instances. I would also say that, unrelated, that we should look into a process of accommodations for senators, maybe similar to sabbaticals that we can send to the advocates or someone who's nonpartisan, who can then make those discretions and then have those accommodations, or maybe even through OSAT or work HR, whatever, I don't know. But we should look into that later. I won't be here, but y'all should look into that. But I'm in favor of this.
Okay, I'm gonna close the debate period, and then we'll go straight into the voting period. Clerk Carter.
Voting is open. With 16 in favor, 2 against, and 2 abstentions, the motion passes.
Okay, we will now go back into the debate period for the bill as a whole. Does anyone have any amendments, any additional amendments that they would like to add? Okay, I'm going to close the debate period. We will go now into the voting period for the entire bill. Clerk Carter.
Voting is open. With 18 in favor, 0 against, and 2 abstentions, the motion passes.
Okay, I'll hand the chair back over to Speaker Owens.
I didn't like having to raise my hand. Okay, that moves us into adjournment. I adjourn this meeting at 12:54 a.m. Go to sleep. If you need emails to teachers about like assignments and stuff, I'm willing to do that, but please come up and talk to me about it. Hey! Oh! Everyone say thank you right now.